Let me introduce you to Fran. She's in the kitchen of this beautiful mansion preparing a breakfast tray. She sets down a mug that says, "My house, my rules, my coffee." Cheesy, but cozy. She adds a croissant, some fruit, and other breakfast items to the tray and starts making her way through this beautiful home. The decor of this home is very out there. The furniture is old but rich, and it looks like there was a party the night before. There's champagne bottles, empty flutes, and crumb-filled plates spread throughout the living room. Fran passes the mess and continues making her way through this enormous mansion. This home is so beautiful, but it's also quite eerie. The rooms are dark, the walls are filled with vintage pictures, and there's also this really stunning library, filled with these thriller books created by Harlan Thrombey. The shelves are filled with his books. I mean, he must have written hundreds of titles. Anyways, Fran approaches the wooden staircase and starts heading upstairs with the tray of food. As I mentioned, this beautiful home is huge and there's actually 3 floors. The first is the main floor with the kitchen, living room, library, the common areas. The second floor has some bedrooms and some bathrooms. And the top floor, the 3rd floor, is Mr. Thrombey's floor, the author of all those thriller books downstairs. Fran approaches the 3rd floor and she enters the master bedroom. "Mr. Thrombey, Mr. Thrombey," Fran eagerly states. She steps into the bedroom but is surprised to see it empty. She shrugs it off and she goes back into the hallway and she taps her foot onto the hallway wall, revealing a secret door with a staircase that leads up to the attic. "Mr. Thrombey, are you up there?" "Mr. Thrombey, I'm coming in," Fran announces as she swings the attic door open, and suddenly she lets out a gasp. Mr. Thrombey is there, lying dead on his couch in a pool of blood. It appears that his throat has been slit. Fran stands there, frozen. She almost drops the plate of food to the ground. I mean, she just cannot believe that he's dead. Who could have killed Mr. Thrombey? Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing super well. So welcome to today's incredibly long video. You guys, I already feel like this is going to be like close to 2 hours. This is crazy, but we're going to be talking about one of my favorite movies ever. This is a movie that I rewatch multiple times a year. I show it to everybody. I'm always constantly talking about this movie because it is just so incredibly well done. And I feel like there's not many movies like this. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2019 movie Knives Out. This is just, I love it. I love this movie so much. In fact, there were 2 sequels made about this movie. It just follows the same detective, but it has a new character, new cast every single time. And all 3 movies are amazing. Knives Out is the first one. Then we have Glass Onion. And then we had the new one, which recently came out, which is called Wake Up, A Dead Man's Mystery, I think it's called. They're on Netflix and on Prime Video, and they are just such fun murder mystery movies. Those are my favorite. I love a movie where you have to figure out who did it, why this person did it, what the twist is going to be, and these movies deliver exactly that. So I thought it would be fun to start off by talking about Knives Out. Like I said, this movie came out in 2019, but I still feel like a lot of people constantly talk about it to this day. The cast was phenomenal. It stars Daniel Craig, Ana de Armas, Chris Evans, Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, there are just so many amazing people in this cast, and I truly feel like the casting in this movie was perfect. Everyone did such an amazing role. They all made it feel like they were a true family. They were so insane in this movie. So we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about this movie, discussing the plot twist, discussing my theories, discussing my questions, my issues with this movie, but also just having a lot of fun because these people are insane and it's just really fun to follow Detective Blanc as he tries to unveil this mystery. I already know this video is going to be so long, so I don't want to talk too much in the intro. I just want to say, if you guys are new here, welcome. This is Let's Set the Scene. We sit down every single week and we set the scene for these insane movies that I just cannot stop talking about. So if you guys are into movies and books, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. I just covered the Housemaid series, so I will have those videos linked here if you guys want to check them out. But we also have a bunch of other fun videos on this channel. I've talked about the Call movie. I've discussed The Stepfather, When a Stranger Calls, Hide and Seek. So if you want to see a variety of movies ranging from horror movies to thrillers to action movies, all of those are on my channel and there's a video for everybody to watch and enjoy. So yeah, I hope you guys can subscribe down below and join me over here. With that being said, enough chit chatter, let's jump right in and let's talk about Knives Out. Let's fast forward to a week later, and let me introduce you to our main character, Marta. She looks like your normal, everyday girl, probably in her mid-20s with short black hair. Marta wakes up in bed, gasping for air. It seems like she just had a nightmare. She gets out of the bed, she opens her bedroom window, and this gives us a peek into where Marta lives, and it's very different from where Mr. Thrombey lived. His house was huge, isolated, rich, and Marta lives in a tiny apartment with her mom and with her sister Alice. Of course, there's nothing wrong with living in an apartment, but this just shows how Marta and Mr. Thrombey come from completely different worlds. Marta heads into the kitchen. She sits on the kitchen table on her computer while her sister Alice watches a murder mystery movie on the kitchen counter. And their mom just sits there, kind of annoyed at the fact that Alice is watching a movie about a murder when Marta's friend just died a week ago. Now, this part in the movie was really funny because the mom was shouting at Alice saying, "Turn the TV off. Your sister's friend just slit his throat open. Be a little bit more sensitive." I thought that was so funny because she's yelling at Alice for being insensitive, but she's literally shouting in Marta's face about how her friend brutally died. So it was just very ironic, but Martha tells her sister that she can keep watching her mystery show, but her sister's like, "No, it's fine. I already figured out who the killer is anyways." She gives Marta a hug and tells her that she's sorry for Mr. Thrombey's death. "It's okay," Marta responds, and suddenly her phone starts buzzing. She picks up her phone, which has a cracked screen, but through the cracks, we can see that the caller ID is Walt Harlan. "Oh, it's Harlan's son," Martha tells her mom. She picks up the phone. "Hi, Marta, it's Walt. Would you mind coming to the house early? The police have a few more questions for everybody." Marta looks a little bit nervous about this. I mean, it's been a week since Harlan died, and it seems like police are still trying to figure out what truly happened. Marta freshens up and she makes her way to the Thrombey mansion, and now we get to see a bit more of this beautiful home and of this beautiful property. It is huge. The house is surrounded by a forest, it's completely isolated, and honestly, it looks like the perfect home for a murder mystery to take place. Just saying. So Marta pulls up to the house, and there's already a couple of police officers outside. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you with the help?" one officer says. Marta stays quiet, but then a girl named Meg walks out of the house, and she is furious at the fact that these officers just referred to Marta as the help. Her name's Marta, and she was my granddad's nurse. She responds with genuine disgust. "It's fine," Marta tells her, but Meg says that no, it's not fine, that they just referred to her as the help. So now we know the relationship between Harlan and Marta. Harlan was quite old, so it would make sense for him to have a nurse to help him out, and it seems like the two were really close. It also appears that Meg and Marta have a good relationship because as they're walking inside, Meg asks Marta how she's doing and gives her a hug. "I'm not doing very well. I feel somewhat alone. I cry a lot, and just the not knowing of what to do next is too much." Meg tells her that anything she needs, she can ask them because she is a part of the Thrombey family. "Thank you," Marta responds, but I feel like a part of her doesn't really believe Meg. Yes, she was Harlan's nurse, and yes, she grew a tight relationship with him and the rest of the family, but she's still an outsider. She's not really a part of this family. The two reach the front door and are greeted by another Thrombey member. "Linda, how are you doing, kiddo?" she asks Marta. Marta leans in for a hug and asks her back, "How are you doing?" "Well, the funeral helped. I guess just seeing him." "Now, I thought you should have been at the funeral, but I was outvoted," Linda says, feeling proud of the fact that she was the only member of the family that really wanted Marta to be there. Again, just repeating what Meg said earlier. Even though Marta was just Harlan's nurse, the family genuinely sees her as one of their own. Meg, Marta, and Linda walk into the house, and again, this home is just so stunning. I just cannot stop staring at every single corner of this home. Every corner seems to have been designed by hand. There's no random furniture, there's no random art, there's no random decorations. Everything seems so intentional in this home, and it just looks so quirky, so whimsical, so dramatic, and just so eerie at the same time. So the three walk into the entrance of the home, and that's when they're met by Richard, Linda's husband. He is on the phone shouting, he sounds really upset, and he angrily hangs up the phone and tells the group he's not coming. Everyone's like, "Who's not coming?" "Ransom, that little he says. "He missed the funeral too." Before the conversation can continue, it is interrupted by Trooper Wagner, who says, "All right, so we're ready for you now. We would like to see you one at a time." The group of four stand there debating who should go first, and that's when Linda volunteers. "You know what? It's fine. Let me just go first. I assume this will all be wrapped up before the memorial tonight," she says. "Yep, we're gonna do our best, ma'am," Trooper Wagner responds. The two walk into the private library to meet with the other detectives, and now it's just Marta and Richard standing in the hallway. Now, Richard seems like kind of like a jerk, honestly. He's just like standing there texting on his phone. He doesn't even bother to look up when he asks Marta, "How are you doing, kiddo?" He literally said the same thing that Linda just said and referred to her as kiddo. Marta doesn't even bother to respond to him because, again, he's not even looking up at her. He's just like, "How are you doing?" Like, it seems like he doesn't even genuinely care about how she's doing. He's just asking to ask. Anyways, let's follow Linda into this beautiful library with the detectives, and I honestly think that this room is the most beautiful room of the entire home. It's filled head to toe with all these beautiful books. There are so many wonderful stories spread throughout this library. There's a bunch of lamps, there's the stunning stained glass windows, and there's also this huge wheel of just knives. It's literally just like a spinning wheel with a bunch of different sized knives stuck on there, and right in front of this wheel of knives is a chair. So it kind of looks like a throne, and it was kind of giving Game of Thrones. So Linda takes a seat right in front of this wheel of knives, and in the seats in front of her are Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner. Elliot is the one really leading this investigation, so he begins by turning on a recorder, and he makes it known to Linda and Trooper Wagner that this conversation will be recorded. All right, so we are here with Linda Thrombey, Harlan Thrombey's eldest daughter, and we're discussing the event that took place that night of his demise 1 week ago, November 8th. "Yeah, we're so sorry for your loss," Trooper Wagner says to Linda. And Linda, she's kind of funny, honestly. She seems like a very boss type of girl, like very stern, very serious. You can tell that she's very confident in herself and just kind of holds herself at a higher level than everyone else. So when Trooper Wagner says, "I'm so sorry for your loss," Linda just sarcastically replies, she's like, "Thank you, that means so much." Again, she doesn't care that he's sorry about her loss, like she doesn't value him. Elliot goes on to explain that the night of Harlan's death, the entire family had gathered at his house to celebrate his 85th birthday. "So how was the party?" he asks. "The party? Pre my dad's death?" "Oh, it was great," Linda sarcastically says. I understand her sarcasm at this point because asking that question is kind of funky. Like, "Oh, how was this like grand party the night that your dad basically killed himself? Like, did you have fun?" So Linda was just very sarcastic with these detectives the entire interview. Again, she seems very stern and very serious, but I also really like her. Like, she just seems like she does not give a crap about anybody else. "So, was there anyone else at the party besides family?" Detective Elliot asks. "Well, yeah, there was Fran, the housekeeper, and of course Marta, Harlan's caregiver. She's a good girl, a hard worker. Her family's from Ecuador," Linda adds. We now get to see a flashback of this party, and it does look quite intimate. The party was filled with this moody ambiance. There were candles all over the place. The fireplace was on. There was a buffet filled with lavish food, champagne glasses being passed around, waitstaff walking around with small appetizers. I mean, this party was quite small, but it definitely looks fancy. "Oh, also, my great-nana was there, Harlan's mom," Linda adds. Detective Elliot is surprised by this because Harlan was turning 35, so how on earth was his mom still alive? "Well, how old is great-nana?" he asks. "We have no idea," Linda responds. "Okay, well, what about your son, Ransom? Did he attend as well?" So now we know who Richard, Linda's husband, was speaking to on the phone earlier. He was speaking with their son, Ransom, who sounds like a jerk and didn't even bother to show up to his grandfather's funeral and isn't even going to bother to show up to the memorial tonight. Yes, he did attend the party, but he left early," Linda responds. We go back to a flashback of the party. And Ransom storms out of Harlan's office when it's clear that an argument just ensued. Great Nana is sitting on a chair outside the office. Ransom swiftly passes by her, hands her a slice of cake, and exits the house through the back door. "Ransom, are you leaving?" Great Nana asks, but he just ignores her. As Linda is repeating this to Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner back in present time, a noise suddenly appears from the back of the library. It's the sound of a piano key. Linda looks back, she's like, "Wait, there's someone back there?" And she looks past Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner, and that's when she sees that there's a third person in this room. A man sitting near the piano. She's like confused by this. She's like, "Wait, what?" Like she had no idea this guy was back there. Who is he? Why is he there? And why did he just play this piano note? Regardless, Linda tries to play it off, and Detective Elliot also tries to ignore this mystery man. Right, so anyways, would you say that all three of you showed up to the party around the same time? He asks. Linda explains that no, they in fact did not arrive together. Her husband Richard showed up early to help the caterer set up. Right, yes, your husband Richard. You two work at the real estate firm in Boston, right? He asks. Now, Linda seems so offended by this question. No, it's my company. I built my business from the ground up, she proudly says. Oh, just like your father, huh? Detective Elliot asks. Linda smiles, again, proud of the fact that she shares that entrepreneurial, successful trait with her dad. Yeah, we had a really special relationship, she explains. The two of them were very close and they even had their own secret way of communicating. See, you had to find a game to play with dad, and if you played by his rules, then you could have that close bond with him, Linda says. As Linda explains this to the detectives, we see a flashback of the birthday party. Harlan is blowing out his birthday candles with Linda and Richard by his side, and they all look so happy together. Now, speaking of Richard, let's talk about his interview with detectives. Again, he is Linda's husband, and together they share their son, Ransom. Now, Richard is a very interesting man. He's also similar to Linda in the sense that he's very cocky and confident, but not as cocky and confident as Linda is. Linda, again, is more stern and very serious. Richard has a little bit of a more charismatic personality, but in a bad way. Obviously, they're filthy rich, so you can tell that that definitely affects his personality, and he's just quite rude. He mentions to Detective Elliot how Harlan's nurse, Marta, was at the party as well. That Harlan hired her to take care of whatever medical needs popped up, but that again, she's like a part of the family. She's just a really good kid, he says. She's been a really good friend to Harlan. Her family is from Paraguay. Linda really likes her work ethic. Immigrants, we get the job done, Richard adds. Now, earlier, Linda was proud of the fact that Marta was an immigrant and that they hired her, gave her a job, and that she's just a really hard worker. However, she also said that Marta was from Ecuador, but here's Richard telling detectives that Marta is from Paraguay, so they're really proud of the fact that she's an immigrant, but they don't even actually know where she's from. Anyways, Richard talks about how Harlan built his business from the ground up, that he started out very small, but then eventually built himself into one of the best-selling mystery writers of all time. Wow, so it really seems like all of his kids are self-made overachievers, Detective Elliot says. Richard takes a pause before answering this question. Yeah, sure, he says, kind of insinuating that he doesn't really agree with the statement, that he doesn't agree with the fact that all of Harlan's kids are self-made overachievers. Okay, for the record, I'm here speaking with Walt Thrombey, Harlan Thrombey's youngest son. So now we're introduced to a new member of this family. So far we have Harlan Thrombey, his daughter Linda, and now we are meeting his son Walt. All right, Walt, so you run your father's publishing company, right? Yeah, it's mine. I mean, it's ours. It's the family's publishing company. Dad trusts me to run it, Walt responds. It seems like he wanted to say that it's my publishing company, but I mean, Harlan is the one that writes the books, so it's technically his publishing company because they're his stories that they're publishing. Yeah, I mean, we sell our books in over 30 languages. We have sold over 80 million copies. We're building a real legacy here. Are you guys a fan of the books? Walt asks. Detective Elliot goes on to explain that he doesn't really do a lot of fiction reading. However, Trooper Wagner interrupts this conversation, very excited about the fact that they're speaking about Harlan's books. Oh, I am a big fan. I mean, all of his plots are insane. I won't spoil it for you, but do you remember the book, Thousand Knives? That was crazy. How did you guys come up with these stories? Trooper Wagner eagerly asks. Walt is thrilled at the fact that at least one of these detectives is a fan of the books. And he goes on to explain that his dad said the plots would just pop into his head fully formed, that it was just really easy for him to create these stories. Suddenly, we hear another note play on the piano. Walt looks up and he looks back and he sees the mystery man just sitting in the back, overhearing this conversation. Walt is like, wait, who is that person? But Detective Elliot once again tries to just ignore this mystery man and he goes back to the interview. Okay, so you guys all live in the area, right? So that means that you guys probably arrived at the party at the same time? Yeah, I think we all did. I think we all got here at around 8. I arrived with my wife, Donna. She's my rock. And with our 16-year-old son, Jacob. He's very politically active, Walt adds. The boy is literally a Nazi, Richard says in his interview speaking about Jacob. Then we also get to hear from Meg, who remember is the girl that greeted Marta earlier when she arrived and defended her when the police officers referred to her as the help. Meg looks pretty young. She's probably in her early 20s. And she also talks about her cousin, Jacob. He is literally an alt-right troll dipshit, she says. And honestly, Walt's family seems very pristine. Walt is wearing this really nice sweater with this nice shirt underneath. His wife Donna was super dressed up at the party wearing these elegant pearls. She just looks very put together, not even a hair out of place. And then we get to see their son Jacob, who also looks like a very preppy boy. He's wearing a nice pristine outfit. He's just sitting down on the staircase case throughout the party on his phone. So it also just seems like this family is very disconnected. Meg and Jacob are cousins, but they obviously do not get along since she seems to be very liberal, and Jacob, of course, seems to be the opposite. It seems like Richard doesn't even like his own nephew because, again, he literally refers to him as a Nazi. However, in Walt's eyes, his son is perfect, and he's like, you know how kids are with the internet, it's amazing. Anyways, back to the interview, Detective Elliot asked if the party went well. Yeah, of course the party went well. I was just really happy to enjoy this night with my dad, to be by his side and to think about our books and what we've accomplished with them. It feels like I can still feel his hand on my shoulder, passing down the torch. Again, Walt refers to Harlan's books as our books, even though again, Harlan is the one who wrote them. Now, when Walt is talking about this night with his dad and how happy he felt being by his side, we get to see a flashback of Harlan blowing out his birthday candles. At first, we saw Linda and Richard standing next to him blowing out the candles, but in this flashback, we see Walt, his wife Donna, and their son Jacob standing with Harlan blowing out the candles. So each of Harlan's kids is having a different perception of how this birthday party actually went. Linda thinks that it was her and her husband blowing out the candles with Harlan, but Walt thinks that it was his own family. So again, it just kind of shows how self-centered they truly are and how they each think that they are the star of this show. Now, let me introduce you to the third child in this equation. Joni Thrombey. Joni isn't technically Harlan's daughter by blood. She was married to his son Neil, who actually passed away 15 years ago. So Joni is Harlan's daughter-in-law. Neil and Joni only had one daughter together, Meg, who I introduced you guys to earlier. They don't explain how Neil passed away, but it seems like despite this, Joni and Meg have remained very close to Neil's family, the Thrombies. Joni goes on to explain that they're basically her only family, and we get to see this really funny flashback of Joni at Harlan's birthday party. Everyone is sitting down in the living room having separate conversations, but Joni is standing there in front of the fireplace just dancing by herself. She's twirling her hair and she's twirling in this really cute flowy dress, and she just seems to be living her best life by herself. I really enjoyed this character, Joni. She was very free-spirited and just super whimsical. So during the birthday party, Joni is dancing by herself. Meg is staring at her, obviously embarrassed by her mom dancing. So Meg walks away. And then Joni tries to go over to Linda, who is sitting down speaking to Harlan. Joni's dancing in front of Linda. She tries to get her to stand up and join her, but Linda pulls her hand away and continues having her conversation with Harlan. Despite this, Joni continues to dance and try to pull her up, even though Linda is literally just ignoring her. It was a really funny interaction and again, just shows the difference between them. Jodi explains to the detectives that she has a skincare company called Flam. That yes, it's skincare, but this brand also promotes a total lifestyle, self-sufficiency with an acknowledgement of human need. That's Flam, she proudly says. But you know what? That's also Harlan. He got me and Meg through some really tough times, she adds. We then switch to Meg's interview, who again is Joni's daughter. Yeah, Granddad gives my mom a yearly allowance and he's never missed wiring a tuition payment to my school. He's genuinely a selfless man, she says. Right, but you left the party early, didn't you? Detective Elliot asks her. We go back to a flashback of the party and we can see Meg saying goodbye to her mom, telling her to have fun and then leaving the house. Meg says that she left the party early to go see some friends at Smith and her Aunt Linda was not happy about this. Linda watches Meg leave and she whispers to her husband Richard, Dad pays for her crypto, Marxist, post-deconstructional feminist poetry 3, whatever major. Yeah, he pays for her tuition. She could have stuck around for the cake, she says. Now, Linda doesn't know this, but Joni overheard the entire conversation. She was standing right behind them and she's just rolling her eyes at the fact that Linda is standing there talking bad about her daughter. And I kind of understood Linda's perspective a little bit. I don't think she went about it the right way, but it's your grandpa's 85th birthday. Meg really couldn't just stand there and wait for him to at least blow out the birthday candles and then go hang out with her friends, or just stayed the entire party to enjoy her grandpa's 85th birthday. I did find it a little bit odd that Meg left early to just go hang out with friends, so I somewhat understood Linda's perspective, but there was really no need to speak about her in such a negative way or to mock her degree. Meg's dad passed away 15 years ago. Again, she looks pretty young, so if she's in college, she's probably 21, 22. So that means that her dad passed away away when she was very little. So the fact that Harlan, who is her grandpa, pays for her tuition and helps Joni out, I think that's like a really kind thing to do because it must have been really difficult after Neil passed away and they had to kind of fend for themselves. So I don't think there's anything wrong with, Harlan paying for Meg's tuition or helping them out financially, but you can tell that Linda and possibly some other members of the family don't really agree with this help. Now, Joni actually mentions this to Detective Elliot in her interview. She's like, yeah, I think Linda was a little bit upset about the fact that Meg left the party early, but I mean, Harlan understood. We then hear another piano note play. Jodi looks back and she's like, what? She looks at the mystery man sitting there playing on the piano and she's like, huh? Like, who are you? She's just, again, very confused like everybody else as to why he's here. And Detective Elliot continues the interview, trying to again ignore the mystery man. Okay, so you two showed up to the party at around the same time, he goes on to say, but Jodi literally interrupts him. She's like, hold on, if I could pause, because I mean, who is that guy? She says, pointing to the mystery man playing the piano. Also, why are we doing this interview again? I mean, this doesn't make sense. We already told you what we know. Yeah, but I mean, we're just doing some follow-up questions, Detective Elliot responds. We're attempting to be thorough so we can figure out the manner of death. Oh, so by manner of death, you mean if someone killed him? Joni asks. You think one of us killed him? One of his family members killed him? Walt asks, now back in his interview. No, Walt, that's not what we meant. I mean, we're just trying to investigate what truly happened, Detective Elliot responds. Okay, so then who the hell is that guy? Richard asks, now in his interview, pointing to the mystery man sitting in the back. Detective Elliot looks quite uncomfortable with this question and he's just like, okay, this is Detective Benoit Blanc. Richard kind of chuckles back because he's like, huh, what kind of name is that? Like, that sounds like a made-up name. Benoit Blanc, Richard says. Yes, Detective Elliot responds. He goes on to explain to the family that Mr. Blanc is a private investigator of great renown. Jodi says that she actually remembers reading a tweet about him about a New Yorker article that discussed how Detective Blanc is this amazing detective that solved this case with like a tennis champ and that he's basically famous. Detective Elliot goes on to explain that Mr. Blanc is not with the police department and that he's not officially involved in the case. However, he has offered to consult. Now, I happily obliged when he offered to consult and I can vouch for him. Detective Elliot reassures everyone because the family is quite confused. I mean, they've already been questioned about Harlan's death a week ago. So now that they're being questioned again an entire week later on the day of his memorial, and the fact that there's now a random third mystery detective added to the case, it doesn't really make sense to the family. In fact, Linda is quite upset about this, and she tells Mr. Blanc, listen, I know who you are. I read your profile in the New Yorker. I found it delightful, but I just buried my 85-year-old father who committed suicide. So why are you really here? Detective Benoit Blanc finally speaks up for the first time, and we see him get out of the chair and get out of the shadows. We can now see who he actually looks like and see more about him, and he finally speaks up. I'm here at the behest of a client. And let me just tell you, when Detective Blanc speaks, he has the best accent ever. I'm obsessed with it. It's this like nice, drawn out, like Southern accent, and he just seems really out of place here because this movie takes place in Massachusetts. So nobody else really has that accent. So again, he just is like kind of like an interesting character. Well, who is your client? Linda asks. I cannot say, but let me assure you that my presence will be ornamental. You'll find me a respectful, quiet, passive observer of the truth, he says. Again, Linda seems hesitant about having Detective Benoit Blanc there, but she continues with the interview. Now, may I just say, as a self-made man myself, I just have to express my admiration for how you really followed in your father's footsteps, Blanc tells Linda. Thank you, Linda proudly responds. I mean, it's just so marvelous. You know, the entire Thrombey family is so successful. Joni has her skincare brand and, Walt has his publishing empire, he says. Linda seems taken aback by this. She's like, well, yes, Walt's done well with what Dad gave him. Not that it really matters, but Dad just hands him a book twice a year and Walt publishes it. It's not the same thing as my real estate business. You can just totally tell that Linda is so bothered at the fact that she was compared on the same level as Walt. Linda again says that she built her real estate business from the ground up. She is insinuating that nothing was handed to her, unlike Walt, and that she did in fact follow in her father's footsteps of building this successful empire. Well, I guess, but Walt runs the merchandising, the adaptations, the film and the TV rights, so it is somewhat of an empire, Benoit responds. Are you baiting me, detective? You know he doesn't run any of that. And if you think I am dumb enough to be baited into talking about family business, into shit-talking my baby brother in front of a police detective and a state trooper, Linda goes on to say, very offended by this. But then we quickly switch to Richard's perspective, her husband, and he has no problem shit-talking Walt. Walt doesn't run shit, he says, because there are no TV and film rights. Harlan never allowed any adaptations of his books. He hated the idea of it, and it drove Walt nuts. Because, of course, movie and TV is where the real money is. So, sometimes when Walt would get a little bit of an Irish courage in him, he would get into it with Harlan. Oh, did he get into it with Harlan at the party? Detective Blanc asks. Obviously, he was baiting Linda earlier, trying to get information out of her about the true relationship between Walt and their dad, Harlan. Linda wasn't giving in. But here's her husband, Richard, spilling all the beans. He's like, oh my god, yes, they definitely got into it at the party. Walt wouldn't leave Harlan alone, and I didn't get to hear what their argument was about, but it must have been pretty bad. Because after their little conversation, Walt was acting like a wounded puppy for the rest of the party, Richard says. We then see a flashback of this party. And we can see Richard spying on Walt and Harlan, who are talking in this private hallway, arguing about something. And Walt is very upset that he even stomps his cane that he walks with. I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys earlier, but Walt has this walking cane that he uses. He's not old or anything. He's the youngest child, so I'm not sure why he uses his cane, but he uses it. And in that argument with Harlan, he was literally stomping it on the ground. Now, Detective Blanc wasted no time in telling Walt exactly what Richard just said about him. Oh my gosh, Richard said what? What? No, oh my gosh, we did not get into a fight that night. Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to get an accurate impression of what actually happened, Detective Blanc says. What did Harlan say to you that night? He asks. We then see a flashback of them at the party. And it seems like Walt was trying to tell his dad that they should turn one of their books into a Netflix series. He's pressuring his dad to hurry up and make this decision because the offer isn't going to be available forever. The window is closing down and they really just need to take advantage of this opportunity. However, Harlan doesn't really seem to care about any of this. It seems like his passion is in writing books and just giving readers what they want. It seems like he doesn't care about the film rights and turning it into a Netflix series. He just wants to write books and he just wants people to be able to enjoy it on the page. Dad, we're turning this into a huge movie. Come on, Dad, you put me in charge of our books. Let me be in charge of this. Please let me do this, Walt begs. They're not our books, son. They're my books. And this is really not how I wanted to have this conversation, but you're right. It's really unfair of me to keep you tethered to something that isn't yours to control. I feel like I've done you a grave disservice. I've kept you from building something of yours that was your own. So you're not going to be running the publishing house anymore. You're free of it, Harlan says. Oh my gosh, Dad, are you firing me? No, Harlan chuckles. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about the details tomorrow. My mind's made up, he says, as he caresses Walt's face and walks away. Back in the interview with detectives, Walt is remembering this horrible conversation about how his dad basically fired him, but of course he doesn't reveal the actual conversation to detectives because it seems a little bit suspicious, right? So he just tells the detectives that they had a conversation about selling ebooks, that it was nothing more than that. Now, if you want to talk about an argument, Ransom had an argument with him. Oh, Ransom? That's Richard and Linda's son, right? Detective Blanc asks. Yep, that's their son. And look, we all love Ransom. He's a good kid and we love him, but he's always been the black sheep of the family. Ransom has never had a job and for some reason our dad always supported him. They had this really insane love-hate bond. They would fight, they would make up, but Jesus, that night of my dad's birthday party, they had a huge blowout. Walt says. About what? Detective Blanc asks. Walt explains that he couldn't really make out what they were fighting about, but that they just know that this was a huge fight because they were having it in a private room when usually they just fight in front of everybody. So the fact that they went into a private room to have this conversation behind closed doors is really suspicious. Now, speaking of getting into it, you were at the house early to help the caterer set up. Did you talk with Harlan at that time? Detective Blanc asks Richard, now back in his interview. Well, I mean, yeah, Harlan was probably there, so we must have spoken. Did you guys speak in his study? No, I don't think so, Richard responds. Well, you see, I spoke with the caterers this morning, and she says that they didn't actually see you there helping her staff. However, what they did see, I guess more here, was Harlan in a screaming match with somebody that afternoon at his study. A screaming match? I don't know. I don't really remember that, Richard says. I mean, Joni was at the house too. She arrived early, so maybe Joni was the one screaming with Harlan. You should probably ask her, Richard says. No, these were two male voices that the caterer heard, Blanc adds. We get to see a flashback of Richard arriving early before the party even began, but he wasn't there to help the caterer set up. He was there for a different reason. It turns out that my gut feeling on Richard was right. I just knew that he was a sneaky little man, and what do you know it? He was having an affair. Of course he was. Of course he was having an affair. Of course he was cheating on Linda, and Harlan had proof of it. He had pictures of Richard in the car with another woman, and it wasn't just pictures of them like sitting down together talking. It was pictures of them making out. You tell her or I will, Harlan demands. That's none of your business. Stay out of my marriage, Richard says. I know my daughter, and she would want to know. I put all of this in a letter to her, Harlan says, as he shows Richard this pink envelope. Tomorrow, she'll get this letter. I'm warning you, stay out of my marriage, Richard adds. No, she deserves to know, and you're going to tell her. Either you tell her or I will, Richard demands. So Richard is lying to the detectives. They were in a screaming match, but of course he can't tell the detectives that it was because Harlan was threatening to reveal his affair to his daughter Linda. That would make him seem a bit suspicious. I mean, what are the odds that Harlan threatened to expose your affair and then that same night Harlan passes away by taking his own life? So of course it's suspicious, and Richard doesn't want to reveal to detectives the truth. Oh wait, yes, I do remember what this was about, Richard says. Harlan had finally decided to put his mom in a nursing home, and Linda was always opposed to that, so I wanted to wait until we got back to Boston to tell Linda to avoid a scene, but Harlan wanted me to tell her in that moment, so yep, that's what the argument was about. Sorry, I forgot, he says. Now you can totally tell that Detective Blanc does not believe a word that comes out of his mouth. So then he goes to his interview with Joni, and he asks Joni about this because she was there early too, so maybe she heard what this fight was truly about. Now, Richard said that you were at the house early that day. Were you there to see Harlan? Blanc asks. Yeah, I was there to see Harlan. Okay, about what? Oh, nothing. I mean, it was just a mix-up with the payment for Meg's tuition. What kind of mix-up? Blanc continues to dig. So as I mentioned earlier, Harlan pays for Meg's tuition, and he also provides a yearly allowance for Meg and Joni. Well, it turns out that Joni was taking advantage of that. She told Harlan's assistant to wire the tuition money directly to the school as per her request, but then she also told another assistant who handles her yearly allowance to wire the tuition money directly to her as well. So she was double dipping Meg's tuition, and she was stealing from Harlan, which is just like an insane thing to do because Harlan was being so kind, giving her a yearly allowance and paying for, Meg's tuition. And the fact that Joni was just stealing from this old man it's just really disappointing. So, of course, when Harlan found out about this, he was extremely upset. He actually confronted Joni hours before his birthday party, telling her that she stole over $100,000 a year from him for the past 4 years. Harlan, oh my gosh, I don't know how this mix-up could happen, but I swear to God, I didn't do this. But Harlan just interrupts her and says, listen, I'm gonna write you this tuition check for you right now. But what you must know is that this is the last money that you or Meg will ever get from me. Joni, I know this is going to hurt, but it's for the best. My mind's been made up, he says as he hands her the final check. Now, Joni doesn't tell Detective Blanc or any of the detectives about this conversation. She just remembers this as she gets the flashback from their argument. And instead, she tells Detective Blanc that it was just a money wiring issue with the school office, so Harlan had to cut her a check for that semester, but that it was really no big deal. Even though, of course, we know it was. I mean, Joni was now financially cut off forever. Detective Elliot steps in and says, all right, why don't we just all take a little bit of a break? And Joni swiftly gets up from her seat and she exits the library. She walks out of there feeling very anxious because what if they do find out that Harlan confronted her about stealing money from him and now she's bumped up to the top of the suspect list, since now it's pretty obvious that police think that something more sinister occurred that night. Joni stands in the hallway trying to catch her breath and just trying to calm herself down when Linda comes racing down the stairs. Joni, have you seen Richard? No, I mean, I just got done with the detectives and that was just really overwhelming, she starts to say. But Linda literally just ignores her and she just walks past her continuing to look for Richard. And Joni's like, okay, thanks. And she just goes upstairs. Again, it just seems like no one in this family really gets along or has a good relationship. Joni was trying to tell Linda that this interview with the detectives was really intense and that she was feeling, weird about it. But Linda doesn't care. Linda doesn't care that this is her sister-in-law, that her brother used to be married to her and that they have a kid together. Like, it just seems like everyone is in their own little world. Frustrated, like I said, Joni heads upstairs and Linda continues searching for her husband, Richard. Richard, she says as she starts roaming the house. Now, Richard is there and he can hear his wife calling after him, but he decides to stay quiet. In fact, he's actually hiding in Harlan's study. He's looking for the letter that Harlan showed him a week ago. Yeah, the letter that Harlan wrote to his daughter revealing that her husband was having an affair. It's obvious that Harlan never sent out that letter because he died that same night. And Linda's been acting normal, so that means that she doesn't know anything. Of course, Richard has to destroy this evidence before Linda ever finds out. So he starts going through his desk, he's like opening all these drawers, and he ends up coming across that pink envelope that has the letter L on it, obviously addressed to Linda. He rips the envelope open, he takes out the letter, and when he opens it, he sees that the letter is completely empty. Harlan never wrote anything on this note, yet he literally shoved it in Richard's face, telling him that all the information about the affair was on there and that he was going to show it to his daughter Linda. As soon as Richard realizes that this note is empty, he just starts like shaking his head saying, son of a bitch, because Harlan played him. He is so annoyed about this that he grabs this baseball that's on Harlan's desk, which is in a lot of the flashback scenes that we've seen. So it seems like Harlan has a connection to this baseball, but Richard grabs it and he just throws it out the office window. Yeah, like he literally just throws it out the window. The baseball falls onto the front lawn. And at that same moment when the baseball like exits the window, Detective Blanc and the rest of the squad are walking outside looking for clues. Detective Blanc sees this baseball like drop to the ground. He picks it up and he puts it in his pocket. Could be a clue. Now, Detective Elliot is questioning Detective Blanc as to why he's here. I mean, yeah, like Detective Blanc is an amazing detective and he's like super well known and everything, but the fact that he just randomly came knocking at his door to tell him that he was going to involve himself in this case, it just doesn't make sense. Like there must be some extraordinary reason behind it. Listen, this is just an open and shut case of suicide. Blanc, I need to know, what are we doing here? Detective Elliot asks. I don't know. I mean, the method is just quite odd. Slitting his own throat. I mean, do you think that's typical for a suicide? Blanc says. I mean, yeah, it's quite dramatic, but look around. Harlan practically lived in a clue board, which is really accurate because I told you this house looks like the perfect place for a murder mystery to take place. So I'm sure Harlan really enjoyed living here and just creating these crazy thriller stories in this insane house. The group starts making their way to the back patio, and inside the house is Marta, the nurse. We haven't seen her in a minute since police have been questioning everybody, so she's just been sitting back there waiting for her turn. She overhears Detective Blanc and the rest of the squad approach the patio. So she approaches this like little stained glass window to eavesdrop on the conversation just to see where they're at in the investigation, and Detective Blanc catches her eavesdropping. He opens the patio door and he's like, hello, like what are you doing eavesdropping on this conversation? He tells Marta to step out onto the patio and says, you're Marta, Harlan Thrombey's nurse, right? Yes, Marta Cabrera. Listen, I've been doing a little of poking around and you were hired on a part-time basis as a registered nurse, right? Detective Blanc asks. Yes, correct. I don't work for a VNA. Harlan hired me privately. Okay, I see. Why don't you take a seat? Blanc says. So you're paid a flat rate for how many hours a week? Well, I started at 15 hours and then he needed more help. Medical help? They ask. No, he needed a friend, Marta responds. Detective Elliot doesn't really see the point in questioning her right there on the balcony when she was scheduled to be questioned later that evening, so he tries to end this conversation. But Blanc is like, listen, I suspect that Harlan probably told you a very much unfiltered truth about each of his children, and a little birdie told me that you have a regurgitative reaction to mistruthin'. Basically, anytime that Marta lies, she pukes. At first, Marta tries to deny this, but she knows it's no use because he's right. Anytime she lies, she has to throw up. It's something that she's dealt with since she was a kid. Just the thought of lying, it makes her puke. Detective Blanc is like, perfect. Is Richard having an affair? He asks. Marta stays quiet, but we see a flashback of her and Harlan sitting out on that same terrace, and he is staring at a picture on his computer, clearly disappointed. What's wrong? She asks. Harlan turns the computer to face her and reveals a picture of Richard and his mistress. Marta tries to ignore this flashback and she's like, Richard, an affair? She asks, trying to act completely clueless. Blanc is like, yeah, an affair. A simple yes or no will do. No, he wasn't having an affair, Marta says. But as soon as those words slip out of her mouth, she immediately jumps out of her seat and she runs to a potted plant and pukes. Detective Elliot and the rest of the squad are like, oh my gosh, she was telling the truth, because at first they were kind of hesitant to believe that she actually pukes after lying. I mean, who does that? That doesn't seem real. But now she is full on puking. So the detectives believe her. They hand her some water, they hand her some tissues, and Detective Blanc is like, perfect. Like, this is going to be my girl throughout this investigation, because he knows that as soon as he confronts her with some theory or with some, lie or something, she has no other option but to tell the truth. So they all take a seat and Detective Blanc is like, I knew it. I knew that Richard was having an affair. His father-in-law must have found out about this and confronted him. That was a screaming match that the caterers heard the morning of his party. Detective Elliot is still hesitant about all of this, though. He doesn't really see this as a motive. He's like, that's just weak sauce. Okay, well, what about Joni? Joni? Trooper Wagner says. No, why would Joni have a motive to kill Harlan? I mean, Harlan was paying for her and paying for her daughter to go to school. Yeah, but imagine if that support was threatened, Detective Blanc says. He then turns to Marta and asks, was Harlan planning on cutting off Joni's allowance? Of course, Marta knows the truth because Harlan always confided in her about family matters. I mean, he confided in her about anything that was going on in his life because they were genuinely friends. Marta's stomach starts to bubble again because she wants to lie and say no, that there's no way he cut her off her allowance. But just by her stomach bubbling, Detective Blanc knows that he's right. Listen, Meg said that he paid the school directly, but Joni told us that he sent the money to her. Both were true, but she was just pocketing the double payment. Harlan found out and he cut her off. Detective Blanc says, okay, so what are you thinking then, that she killed him for the inheritance? Detective Elliot says, yeah, I mean, I don't know. This doesn't really seem like a good motive. Again, this is just more weak sauce, they say. I mean, I guess, but still, she lied to me. All three of them lied to me, Detective Blanc says as he lights a cigarette. All three? They ask. Yeah, Walt. Harlan had always told him that he did not want to turn his books into movies and TV shows. That night at the party, Walt probably brought it up again, and I mean, look at the pattern. That night on his birthday, Harlan was cleaning house. He was cutting off all of his children. Detective Blanc then turns to Marta. Did Harlan plan on firing Walt that night? Marta looks so uncomfortable at this question and she asks, can I just go inside and wait for you guys to interview me later? And Detective Elliot's like, yes, that's fine. Go inside. Like, we'll find you later. So Marta goes back into the house and Detective Blanc finally reveals to Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner why he's here in the first place. He tells them that an envelope of cash showed up at his apartment yesterday with a news clipping of Harlan's death. An envelope? That worked? That made you show up? Detective Elliot says. Well, it was an envelope full of cash, so that must mean that somebody suspects foul play, and they went through all of this trouble of hiring me in secret to stay anonymous. Still, it just doesn't really make any sense why someone hired me, Detective Blanc says. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Let's go over everyone's whereabouts at the time of Harlan's death, Blanc says. So the party ended at around 11:30 p.m. that night. Harlan said goodbye to everybody, and then him and Marta went upstairs to get ready for bed and for her to give him his medication. Now, the majority of the family spent the night at the house because, the party ended very late. Linda and Richard live back in Boston. Joni and Meg, I'm not sure where they live, but I don't think they live nearby because they also spent the night. So as I mentioned at the beginning, on the first floor is the living room, the kitchen, all the basic stuff. The second floor has a couple of guest bedrooms, so Linda and Richard took one bedroom and Joni and Meg took the other. On the third floor is Harlan's bedroom. And then, as I said, there's a secret fourth floor that leads to his attic and to the study. Now, the stairs leading up to Harlan's bedroom and up to the third and fourth floor are really creaky. So since Linda was sleeping on the second floor, anytime someone went upstairs to Harlan's bedroom, she could hear the floor creak horribly. That's how police know anytime someone went upstairs, because Linda would wake up, look at the time, and she made a mental note of it. So the first creak someone made by going upstairs was heard by Joni, who was meditating in her room. She was concerned about Harlan, so she went upstairs to investigate, and as she was walking upstairs, she made a creaky noise which woke up Linda. Joni made it all the way upstairs to Harlan's office on the fourth floor, and she knocked on the door. Harlan swiftly opened the door and she just saw Marta standing back there, getting his medication ready, and Harlan seemed to be in a normal mood. Joni asked if everything was okay because she heard a noise, and Harlan said that it was fine, that their go board got knocked over, and that was it. I'm fine, go to bed, Joni, Harlan said. Okay, love you, good night, Joni replied, and then headed back downstairs. 10 minutes later, though, Linda was awoken a second time. This is because Marta was leaving. "Walt, I'm leaving," Marta said as she walked to her car. Walt was smoking a cigar on the front porch, and his son Jacob was sitting there as well, just on his phone. Walt looked down at the time. He noted that it was midnight and saw Marta drive off. Then, 15 minutes later, Linda was woken up for the third and final time. She was woken up by the sound of someone coming downstairs. It was Harlan, who was coming down for a midnight snack. Walt heard him come downstairs. He told his dad to go back to bed, and that was it. So based on these witness accounts, the medical examiner determined that the time of death for Harlan was sometime between 12:15 and 2 o'clock in the morning. Meg came back home from seeing her friends at around 12:30. She went straight to bed. Walt and Jacob turned in shortly after that, and then sometime later that night, they're not sure what time, but possibly near 3 o'clock in the morning, Meg woke up because the dogs were barking outside. She noted the time, she got up to go use the bathroom, and went back to bed. That's it. That's the entire timeline of the night. I know it sounds a little bit confusing, but as you can see, something happened between midnight when Marta left, to when Harlan came downstairs to get a midnight snack, to when Meg came home, and then to when she heard the dogs barking at 3 o'clock in the morning. So what happened in those 3-4 hours? Detective Blanc listens to this timeline and he's like, "Are you sure there's not another staircase that goes up to Harlan's floor?" "No, it's just the main staircase, the creaky one," Detective Elliot responds. Detective Blanc truly believes that something more sinister is going on here, but the rest of the squad doesn't really agree with him. They all believe that this was a suicide, that Harlan did this to himself, that the blood splat patterns showed that they were uninterrupted, meaning it's almost impossible for anyone to have been around him at the time. Well, physical evidence can tell a clear story with a forked tongue, Detective Blanc says. Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner are like, "Wait, what did you just say?" Like, that doesn't really make sense. Again, Detective Blanc is just such an interesting character. He has that southern accent. He's dressed very nice and elegant. Like, he looks like a bougie little detective. He's like smoking his cigar. He says the most random things. Like, whatever he just said doesn't make any sense. But nonetheless, he continues with his little speech. And as we can see from this morning, everyone can lie. Well, almost everyone, he says, referring to Marta. Now, speaking of Marta, let's talk about her interview with Detective Blanc. He went over the timeline with Marta and told her, okay, think carefully with as much detail as possible about what happened between you taking Harlan upstairs at 11:30 to give him his medication and put him to bed, and then to 30 minutes later when you left the home at midnight. Tell us what happened in that half hour. Now, this is when we get to see Marta's perspective. I mean, we get to see what exactly happened from her point of view. So that night, she walked him to his bedroom, and Harlan seemed to be in a very great mood, despite having those really difficult conversations with each of his family members throughout the night. Marta tries to direct Harlan to his bedroom to give him his medication and get him ready for bed, but Harlan decides to go up to the 4th floor, which is his attic/study. Marta tells him to stop, to just get ready for bed, like it's been a long day, but Harlan's like, "It's my birthday, like I'm not ready for bed yet." So he heads upstairs and he asks Marta if she wants to play a game of Go. Now, Harlan's study is so cozy, so quiet. It's just like this quiet little nook, also filled with a bunch of books, with a couple of couches, some cozy lamps. It's just like a very nice, warm ambiance. Now, Marta is hesitant about playing this game because, first of all, it's almost midnight. She had a glass of champagne, so she's feeling a little bit off, and she still has to give him his medication, get him ready for bed, and still drive home. So she's ready to just call it a night. But again, Harlan's like, "It's my birthday. You can't deny me a birthday gift." Like, his birthday wish is to play a game with her. Marta finally agrees to play with him. They start their Go board, and Marta's winning, and Harlan doesn't understand how he always loses his game to Marta. He's being somewhat of a sore loser, so he decides to fake an earthquake and shake up the entire board and just flip the board over, throwing all of the pieces to the ground. And he just starts laughing, and Marta's like, "Oh my gosh, you are such a sore loser." Marta starts picking up all the pieces, and when he knocked over the Go board, he also knocked over his medication that Marta had set on the table. So Marta starts cleaning everything up. She tells him, "Okay, game's over. I'm going to give you your medication and then you have to go straight to bed." Harlan agrees to call it a night. He rolls up his sleeves and he's ready to get injected with his daily medication. Marta starts preparing him and she's like, "Did you enjoy your birthday? I know you weren't looking forward to it," she says, in regards to those difficult conversations he planned to have with his children. Now, I know I wasn't looking forward to it, but I did it. I cut the line on all 4 of them. It was not easy. And sometimes I feel like this fortune is a curse. Harlan goes on to explain why he decided to cut off each of his family members. He wants to let Walt write his own stories and not just publish his stories. He agrees that he could have been a father to Joni and not just a provider. And then he adds that, he could have been kinder to Linda and to Ransom. As soon as he says Ransom's name, which again is Linda and Richard's son, he's like, oh my gosh, Ransom, there's so much of me in that boy. He's confident, stupid. He plays life like a game without consequence. It's the same thing I did, until you can't tell the difference between a stage prop and a real knife. And as Harlan is giving this speech about Ransom, he grabs like a knife prop that he had nearby. He undoes it, and then he stabs the knife into his coffee table, revealing that it's not just a prop, it's a real knife. Honestly, it seems like Harlan's only birthday wish was to fix some of this mess before he dies. Honestly, it seems like that's why Harlan and Ransom butt heads so much, because they are such a similar person. I mean, Harlan says that he sees so much of him in Ransom. That's probably why he continues to spoil him, just give him money, even though everyone else makes it seem like Ransom isn't a good person and is undeserving of this. Harlan's only birthday wish is to fix some of this mess before he goes. He wants to make his family whole again. They all just seem so disconnected, so spoiled, so bratty, just horrible people. And you can tell that this really affects Harlan. He feels like this is partly his fault. Now, throughout this entire conversation, Marta was injecting Harlan with his daily medication. And since he had such a difficult and long night, she suggests that he can take some of the good stuff. The good stuff meaning morphine. Harlan agrees to take some morphine because it's his birthday. So she starts injecting him with this medication. And as soon as she starts reading the label on the bottle, her entire face changes. Is there a problem? Harlan asks. Yeah, this is what I just gave you 100 milligrams of. I messed up, Marta says as she shows him the morphine bottle. Wait, you gave me 100 milligrams of the good stuff? Okay, what is the good stuff dosage supposed to be? Harlan says. Let's not call it that right now. Okay, it's supposed to be 3 milligrams, Marta says. Oh, 3 milligrams? Well, that's way too much. Whoa, what happens now? Harlan asks. Well, I'm gonna give you an emergency shot of naloxone so that you don't die in the next 10 minutes. Marta is like freaking out as she's saying this. She's like literally shaking while she gets up, goes to her medical bag and starts rummaging through it looking for this emergency medication. Now, Harlan isn't actually freaking out because he's sure that Marta is going to find that emergency medication and that everything will be okay. In fact, he actually starts to laugh about the situation because he's like, oh my gosh, you know what? This makes a very interesting and efficient method of murder. I need to write this down for my next book. He literally pulls out his notebook and starts writing this plot down, probably again to use it for his next mystery murder thriller. So he's like very relaxed about the situation and he's kind of enjoying it. But Marta isn't. She is standing there in front of him, freaking out, rummaging through her medical bag, searching for this medication. Harlan starts writing down the plot and he's like, okay, so if someone switched the medication on purpose, I would be dead in 10 minutes, right, Marta? Yes, you'll feel symptoms in 5, sweats, disorientation, and then yes, that big dose injected within you, yes, within 10 minutes your brain, yes, you will die, she says, clearly flustered. Okay, so from the moment of injection, Harlan asks, well, it's been about 8 minutes now since you've injected me, and even if the victim called an ambulance when he first felt the symptoms, and if he lived in a great big country house like I do, the ambulance would probably take around 15 minutes to arrive, and then it would be too late. I mean, that would only be the scenario if the victim didn't have the emergency medication. Marta, do you have the medication? Harlan asks. And now, when Harlan asks this, his tone does seem more serious this time. At first, he was playing around thinking that this was a good murder mystery plot, but now he's genuinely concerned as to why Marta hasn't found the medication yet. Marta is crying, sorting through her bag, and she's like, yes, I have to have it because it comes with the kit. It has to be here. But then she takes a deep breath and says, it's not here, Harlan. I don't know why it's not here. I'm gonna go use the phone, okay? I'm gonna call an ambulance, she says as she dials 911. But before she can even ask for help, Harlan grabs the phone and hangs it up. Why did you just hang up the phone? She asks. Harlan explains to her that they can't call the police because she will get in trouble for making this mistake, and this could affect her mom. My mom? Marta asks. Regardless of the fact, she still wants to call the police, so she reaches for the phone again, and the two actually start fighting for it. They're like fighting for this phone. Marta decides to make a run for it so she can go downstairs to use another phone, but Harlan like puts his foot out, he trips her, which causes her to fall to the ground, which then makes a loud thud. Before they can even continue this conversation, there's suddenly a knock on the door. Quickly, get behind me, Harlan tells her. Harlan puts himself together and he goes to open the door, and it's Joni. Remember earlier from Joni's perspective, she told us that she heard a noise and went upstairs to make sure that Harlan was okay? Well, that was that moment. Harlan, is everything all right? She asks. Oh, hi, Joni. Yes, everything is fine. I just knocked over the SCO board. Sorry about that. Okay, so everyone's all right then? Joni asks, still not convinced. Yeah, totally fine. Go to bed, Joni, Harlan says. Okay, well, maybe tomorrow we can talk about the family, Joni goes on to say. But Harlan cuts her off and tells her, yep, that's fine. We'll talk tomorrow. All right, good night. Love you, Joni says. Love you, bye, Harlan responds as he closes the door. Now, while they were having this interaction, Marta was just standing behind Harlan with her back facing the door, so Joni couldn't actually see her face, and that's good she didn't because Marta was back there trying to hold in all her tears, just freaking out thinking about the fact that she made this huge mistake and that now Harlan is refusing to ask for help. The fact that Harlan was so calm and acted as if nothing was wrong in front of Joni, even though in his mind he knew that he was about to die in the next 5 minutes, was really sad to watch. Especially when Joni was like, all right, we'll talk tomorrow about everything. You know, I love you. And he's like, yeah, we'll talk tomorrow. Love you. Even though he knew he was never going to see her again. That part just broke my heart, which is why I really enjoy this movie because you go through such a roller coaster of emotions. First, you're like laughing and having a good time because Detective Blanc is just insane and he's just such a funny character. The family is so chaotic, so it's really entertaining to watch them just be these horrible people. Then you also feel that thrill and that anxiety of like, well, what actually happened? Did Harlan kill himself? Did he not? Like, what does this investigation mean? But then you also feel a wave of sadness, knowing that Harlan felt so disconnected from his family, that his children were just spoiled and kind of using him, and that then he knew he was going to die before he died and just accepted it and was willing to make up a plan to cover this up just so Marta and her family wouldn't get in trouble. So again, you just go through all of these emotions and it's just really, really sad to see. Now, once the coast is cleared, Harlan and Marta go back to their plan. And she still wants to call an ambulance, but he tells her that if she gets in trouble, her mom could get deported, so he's not going to let that happen. Now, the first step in the plan is for Marta to go downstairs as loudly as she can and to call attention to the time. That way, Walt, who was out smoking on the patio, can make a note of it. So Marta goes downstairs, stomping on the steps. She goes outside and tells Walt, gosh, it's almost midnight. Walt looks down at his watch and he confirms that, yeah, it is midnight. And then he physically sees Marta get into her car and drive away. But Marta isn't going home. Instead, Harlan tells her to go out of the driveway and past the gate. But to avoid the security cameras, she needs to pull off the road before the carved elephant. There's like a carved elephant statue like at the end of the driveway, so we can see Marta driving away. But she can't remember if Harlan told her to exit before the elephant or after the elephant. There's no time to think about this, so Marta makes a quick decision and she decides to pull off the road before the carved elephant. She then parks her car in this little nook in the woods and goes back onto the property through the back gate. Now, the dogs are usually out there, but since they recognize Marta, they don't start barking, which is amazing because if they started barking, that would alert the rest of the party who was still inside, sleeping in the house, that someone was out there. So thankfully, the dogs let her go. She makes it through the side gate, and the way that she's going to get back into the house is not through the front door, but instead through a trick window. Yes, of course there's a trick window in this house. Like I said, this house is like the perfect property for a murder mystery to happen, so of course there's a trick window. However, the way to get to this trick window is by climbing up the trellis on the side of the house, which isn't going to be easy. There's no other option though, so Marta has to do this. She starts climbing up the trellis and she accidentally breaks one of the little steps on the trellis, which falls to the ground. But regardless, Marta continues climbing up the trellis. She goes in through the trick window, which is on the 3rd floor, which only has Harlan's bedroom. She gets into the hallway through the trick window. She goes to Harlan's room and puts on his robe and his cap. The next part of the plan is for Marta to go downstairs pretending to be Harlan, to go get a midnight snack. That way, Walt, who is still on the front porch, can see his dad, or who he thinks is his dad, alive and well at a certain time. Marta, pretending to be Harlan, goes downstairs, and as we know, Walt tells him to go back to bed to not get a late night snack, and Marta, pretending to be Harlan, does exactly that. So at this point, Walt is the main witness to the situation. He has now confirmed to detectives that Marta left the house past midnight, and he has also confirmed to detectives that his dad was alive and well 30 minutes later going downstairs to get a midnight snack. Marta has already left, so Harlan Harlan created this genius plan because now the security cameras show Marta driving off, and then 20 minutes later he is seen alive and well by his son. So now Marta has gone from suspect number 1 to basically an impossibility. This entire reveal was just insane to me because at first when we got to hear like the timeline of what happened that night and Walt's perspective, we never figured that that wasn't actually Harlan who walked downstairs to get the midnight snack, or that all of this was fake, like that all of this was a setup. So now hearing that Harlan and Marta created this entire plan to help her escape and, get off the suspect list was really entertaining. So anyways, after Marta goes downstairs pretending to be Harlan, she goes back upstairs to take off the robe, take off the cap, and then she leaves the house the same way she came in, through the trick window. She climbs down the trellis, and honestly, the most important part of this plan is for her to not be seen. However, when she is climbing down the trellis and reaches the backyard, she comes face to face with Great Nana, who for some reason is still sitting there alone after the party, just staring out at the window. Marta and her literally come face to face through the window, and when she sees Great Nana, she just freezes, but instead of Great Nana recognizing her, she just says, "Ransom? Are you back already?" Again, earlier at the party, we saw Ransom storm out of the house after having that fight with Harlan. He passed Great Nana, handed her a slice of cake. So maybe since she's quite old, she doesn't even remember like this happening, and she just thinks that Marta is Ransom coming back after leaving the party. Marta, of course, just ignores her and she just runs away. She goes back out through the side gate and then she drives home. Harlan tells her that in the next few days, the police will question her, of course, but that she's not going to have to tell a full lie because obviously he knows that she can't lie, but that she'll just have to tell fragments of the truth. Marta listens to this plan before acting all of this out and she's like, "This is ridiculous. Like, I'm not gonna do this. Let's just call an ambulance. Like, maybe you'll be okay." Before she can continue protesting, Harlan lies down on the couch inside his study. He gets comfortable and then he slits his throat in front of Marta. And now we know exactly how Harlan Thrombey truly died. This reveal was so shocking, especially while watching the movie, because I feel like with most movies, we don't discover this reveal or this big twist until the end of the movie. So I thought it was interesting that this movie did it differently. They told us exactly what happened, who the killer was, how the twist happened. They told us everything right in the middle of the movie. So it was just really fun to experience that and be like, oh, like we already know who did it. We already know who killed Harlan. We already know what exactly happened. So the rest of the movie, it was really exciting and just entertaining to watch Marta try to like cover up her lie. So going back to Marta's interview with the detectives, she does exactly what Harlan told her to do. She tells fragments of the truth, and Detective Blanc doesn't really believe her story. You can tell that he's a bit suspicious about her timeline, but instead of continuing to press her, he tells her, "Okay, thank you. That'll be it." And Marta immediately gets up and she goes straight to the bathroom to throw up. Now, the memorial starts later that night, and Marta's having a conversation with Fran, the housekeeper. Fran still doesn't believe that Harlan took his own life, and she starts talking about how maybe he was murdered or secretly poisoned. She mentions that there was a similar plotline in this Hallmark movie that she was watching, and how her cousin, who works at the medical examiner's office as a receptionist, has mentioned that poisoning is a very common thing. So Fran continues discussing how this could all be a murder mystery movie, but Marta is basically zoning out. She is not even focusing on this conversation. Instead, she is just staring out at the living room behind Fran, and she has a flashback to the night of Harlan's birthday party. That night, the main group of the family were in the living room, sipping champagne, eating dessert, and were having a very heated political debate. Richard, Linda's husband, mentioned that he doesn't like the current president because he's an asshole, but that maybe an asshole is what this country needed. Joni, who of course is our liberal, whimsical queen, she tells him to take off his red cap and mentions that the streets are literally flooded with Nazis. So the two get into this heated political debate. The rest of the family just sits there watching, not really saying anything. They're just kind of like, "Oh, come on guys, let's not talk about this," but they're not really doing anything to manage the conversation. Walt's wife, Donna, seems to have some pretty strong opinions about this as well. She starts talking about how millions of Mexicans are coming into the country, and she says that their country is losing their way of life and their culture. She just seems to be very... you know what I mean. So anyways, they all start going through this political debate. Richard seems very passionate about immigration and says that people need to come here legally. So he decides to bring Marta into the conversation. He literally calls Marta over and he's like, come here, join the conversation. And Marta walks over to join them, even though she doesn't really have to listen to what they say. They're not her boss. She has no reason to follow their orders because she works for Harlan, not the family. Regardless, she walks over and joins this horrific conversation. Marta, your family is from Uruguay, right? But you did it the right way. I mean, what I'm saying is that your family came here legally. See, she did it the right way. You work hard and you'll earn your share from the ground up. You agree with me, right? Richard asks. This is such an uncomfortable conversation. It's like so insane that he's just telling Marta all of this. And what's really interesting about this specific scene is that the rest of the family keeps telling Marta, oh, don't answer his question, or I'm so sorry, Marta, this is so embarrassing, or Richard, just leave the poor girl alone. And they keep like encouraging Marta to leave the conversation. And again, they apologize to Marta for Richard's insane behavior, yet they don't really call him out on what he's saying or abruptly end this conversation. They're just kind of passive about it. They're like, yeah, just ignore him, but they're not actually doing anything to save Marta from this conversation or again to truly correct Richard for this very ignorant behavior. Marta just stays quiet. She does not know what to say to this, and again, everyone just tells Richard to leave the poor girl alone. It's okay, no, it's okay, right? I just want to hear what she has to say. It's okay, Marta, you can speak, Richard says, again in a very condescending way. He then goes on to say that if you want to become an American, there are legal ways to do it. But if you break the law, it doesn't matter how good your heart is or how good of a person you are, you have to face the consequences. Now, while Richard is saying this, while he's literally talking about immigration and just all of this stuff, he hands like Marta his dinner plate as if to say like, here, I'm done, throw it away. Which is insane because Marta is literally Harlan's caretaker. She is not the housemaid. She is not the waitress. She is not the housekeeper. She is literally nothing to them. Like, she does not work for them, yet they see her as just like their helper, even though again, she is there to help Harlan. So Marta has no obligation to grab his plate and clean up after him, but of course she does it because there's just that huge power imbalance there. So, as you can see, this conversation was completely spiraling out of control, but it was suddenly interrupted by the sound of Ransom and Harlan having an argument. Are you goddamn insane? Ransom yells. It's done, Harlan responds. I'm warning you, Ransom says before storming out of Harlan's office. The entire family in the living room turns around and are just so confused as to what this argument could be about and why they're fighting on Harlan's birthday. So anyways, Marta breaks out of this flashback from the party and we are now back in current time at the memorial. And she is still standing in front of Fran, who is having this one-sided conversation about how Harlan might have been murdered. The weight of this huge dark secret is so heavy on Marta that she actually almost passes out, and Joni's daughter Meg comes up to her, she helps her up from the ground and asks her if she's okay. Yeah, I'm fine, Marta says. Hey Fran, do you still have your stash? Meg says. The three then head over to this like separate private living room and they approach this clock above the fireplace. Fran opens a drawer at the bottom of the clock and she pulls out a stash of substances. Meg offers Marta a hit of this substance so she can relax, but Marta tells her that she doesn't smoke that, so Meg starts smoking it herself. Marta continues to apologize for almost passing out, and Meg's like, you don't have to apologize. Like, there's no reason for you to say sorry. Wait, so that's where Fran keeps her, stash? Marta says, surprised that she just keeps it here in her employer's house. Well, yeah, who's gonna open a clock? Meg responds. Meg exits the living room to leave Marta to continue to gather herself, and she approaches her uncle Walt. Hey, did you tell Marta about what we talked about yet? She asks. No, not yet. Is now a good time? Walt says. Yes, now is a very good time. Come on, Meg says, very excited to have this conversation. Oh, okay, Walt says as they make their way towards Marta. Listen, Marta, we've been talking it over and... Wait, have you guys been smoking grass? Walt says. No, Meg says. Come on, tell her what we said. Okay, anyways, Marta, we've been talking it over and the entire family... We'd like to take care of you. What does that mean? Marta asks. Well, we all think that you deserve something financially, and we would just like to help you out. You were never anything but good to Dad, and you can count on us. Listen, I thought you should have been at the funeral, by the way, but I was outvoted, Walt says. Now, this is interesting because earlier, Linda said the same thing. Linda told her that she wanted her at the funeral, but that she was outvoted. Yet here is Walt saying the exact same thing, so who's telling the truth? Was it Linda that really wanted Marta at the funeral, or was it Walt? Or are both of them just lying? This is just all too much for Marta, so she goes outside to get some fresh air. And that's when she comes across Detective Blanc. He is still there, just like lingering around the house, even though the interrogation ended hours ago. He lights a cigarette and the two start talking about the case and how it's very suspicious. So, did you know Harlan? Marta asks. Well, he knew my father, who was a police detective years ago. My father respected Harlan, and that says quite a lot. Okay, so then that's why you were hired, Marta asks. No, but I did stay here hoping to speak to you a little more. Something is afoot with this whole affair. I know it, and I believe you know it too. Now, the medical examiner was ready to rule this a suicide, but Detective Elliot agreed to keep it pending for 48 hours. So, tomorrow morning I'm going to search the grounds and search this entire house and begin my investigation. I want you to be by my side for it, Detective Blanc says. Wait, why? Why do you want me to be with you? Marta says, clearly surprised by this. Well, I want you to be my eyes and ears. I trust your kind heart, and honestly, you're the only one who had nothing to gain from Harlan's death. Marta agrees to help Detective Blanc out because what other choice does she have? If she denies helping him, then she looks suspicious. But if she does help out, then that gives her an advantage. She can have a sneak peek into the investigation. She can look into the case file and see what evidence the detectives actually have, and if any of that evidence could lead back to her. So Marta agrees to help out. She agrees to see him tomorrow morning. She goes back home to her own home after this incredibly long day. She walks into her apartment and her mom is sitting down watching a novela. She joins her mom on the couch and the two don't say anything to each other. They just enjoy each other's company. All Marta can think about is Harlan and how the last memory she will ever have of him is him slitting his throat right in front of her. Now, this part was a bit confusing to me because why would Harlan want to traumatize her with that horrifying memory forever? That part of the movie didn't quite make sense to me. You would think that he would do this as soon as Martha left the room and closed the door behind her, but the fact that he did this in front of her is just crazy and so incredibly traumatizing. That moment is forever engraved in her mind. And as she is sitting there thinking about this, we can see Marta tapping her foot. And when we get a closer look at her shoe, we can see that it's stained with a single drop of blood. That must have landed there when Harlan killed himself. The spray of his blood must have reached her shoe, and Marta has no idea that a huge piece of incriminating evidence is right there on her foot. Anyways, the next morning, Marta heads back over to the Thrombies residence to join Detective Blanc and his investigation. It's Marta, Detective Blanc, Detective Elliot, and Trooper Wagner. They're like the dream squad, right? And they all go to the security guard's office that's on the property. Now, the security guard is the cutest guy ever. He's this cute little old guy, and he's just so adorable and so proud of his job. He tells the detectives that he's been the head of the security company for the past 50 years, and that the night Harlan passed away, he actually saved the security tape just in case. So he pulls it out and he starts playing it in the TV. And this is when Martha realizes that she made a mistake. Remember when we were discussing the plan? Harlan told Marta to turn off the road before the carved elephant to avoid the security cameras. Well, that was wrong. She was supposed to turn after the elephant. So now when they reach that part of the night, they will be able to see that Marta didn't actually go home. Instead, she veered to the right and went back to the property. So Marta is freaking out thinking, oh my gosh, detectives are gonna figure out that I lied. So she starts messing with the tape. She's clicking the forward button to make it go by faster, but at the same time, she clicks the eject button, which makes the tape pop out. And then the entire machine starts to smoke. The detectives are wait, what just happened? What happened to the tape? The cute little security guard explains that sometimes that happens since the equipment is so old. So the detectives agree to just take the tape and look at it back at the police station with their more, advanced technology. Marta grabs the tape, she puts it in her pocket, and the group heads out of the security office. This part also didn't really make a lot of sense to me because yes, Marta is helping them out with the investigation, but she is still a key witness to this case. So the fact that they just let her hold on to this very important evidence in a murder investigation was just really funny to me. Anyways, the group head into the woods and they start making their way back to the Thrombey property, but this time they start going in through the back entrance. As they're making their way there, Trooper Wagner asks Marta for the tape. Marta gladly hands it to him, but what he doesn't know is that Marta actually grabbed a magnet from the security office and she used that magnet to scrub the tape clean. So now when the detectives go back to the police station and play the tape, it will be completely ruined. Anyways, the group make it to the side gate, and the next few sequences of events were really funny to watch because Marta was really just covering up her tracks right in front of their noses. So she realized that she left some muddy footprints there in the mud, so she decides to walk all over the footprints and mess it up, and the detectives are wait, you're walking all over these footprints, we could have used this to match and see who this belonged to. But she's oh my gosh, I didn't see it, I'm sorry. Then she sees that piece from the trellis that fell when she was climbing up the trick window. One of the dogs dogs actually brings it up to her, kind of like as a toy, and she just like grabs it out of the dog's mouth. She like throws it back in the woods when the detectives aren't looking. So it's just really funny to see how Marta was trying to get rid of all of this evidence, again, right in front of their noses, but they didn't even realize it. They're all just looking around the property trying to see if there are any clues. And that's when they see Linda and Richard pull up to the house. The detectives mention to Marta that there's actually going to be a will reading this afternoon, so the entire family will be there again. Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner go inside the house to speak to Richard and Linda, while Detective Blanc and Marta head upstairs to the 4th floor, which again is the study where Harlan killed himself. Detective Blanc starts looking around the study looking for any clues, and Marta is freaking out, of course, because she hasn't been inside the study since Harlan's death. It's a very eerie situation, but this creepy moment is interrupted by the sound of a car pulling up outside. Detective Blanc looks out the window, and that's when we finally get to meet Ransom. He shows up in this like very fancy car, and we haven't really seen much of him. Again, he is Linda and Richard's son, and he is the one that was fighting with Harlan the night he died. So Ransom pulls up to the house looking like a jerk. Honestly, he looks just like so cocky, so rude, so just like oblivious to like anyone else or anything else around him. So the dogs immediately start barking at him because they can just tell he's not a friendly person, and he doesn't even acknowledge the dogs really, or even Detective Elliot or Trooper Wagner. He literally just ignores them. So again, he just has a very rude and just cocky attitude. Hugh Ransom Drysdale, one of the detectives, asks him, "Ransom, call me Ransom. It's my middle name," Ransom responds. "Only the help calls me Hugh." "Okay, well, this is Trooper Wagner and I'm Detective Elliot. We just want to ask you a few questions." Again, Ransom literally just ignores them. He goes into the house, he goes into the kitchen, grabs a bag of these like Biscoff cookies, and he starts eating them in front of their faces. Again, just acting oblivious to this entire investigation. "Hey, listen, we are officers of the law. You have to listen to us," Trooper Wagner says. "Well, I don't feel like talking. I'm very distraught over my grandpa's death," Ransom sarcastically says. He then joins the rest of the family in the living room, and he's the last person to arrive for this will reading. He sits down, and the entire family is shocked to see him because it seems like, again, he's the black sheep of the family. He's not really close to anybody. He's not even close to his own parents. "Hey, Franny, how about you serve me a glass of cold milk with these cookies?" Ransom says as he bites into the Biscoff cookies. "Hey, that's not her name, and also that's not her job," Meg says, defending Fran. "Oh, hey, Meg, how's that dumb degree going?" Ransom sarcastically says. "Trust fund prick," Meg responds. Again, it seems like nobody in this family really gets along, but especially Ransom. Everyone kind of hates him, and he just brings this like very intense and just agitated energy. This conversation is interrupted by a man named Alan, who walks in letting them know that he is the person that will be reading the will and that he's just gonna go set up in the other room, but that he'll be ready in 10 minutes. Everyone just sits there quietly waiting for these 10 minutes to go by until Walt finally breaks the silence. "Funny how you didn't show up to the funeral, but you show up early for the will reading," he says to Ransom. "I mean, actually, it's funny that you're here at all. I mean, why bother even coming?" "What's that supposed to mean?" Linda asks. "He knows what it's supposed to mean," Walt responds. "Wait, Walt, what? Tell me what that means," Linda says. "Well, my son Jacob was in the bathroom the night of the party, and he overheard Ransom and Harlan's fight." "Jacob, what did you hear that night?" they all ask. "All I heard was, 'my will,' and then I heard Ransom say, 'I'm warning you.'" "Ransom? What does that mean?" Linda asks her son. "Well, I think it means that our father finally came to his senses and cut this worthless little brat out of the will. So I guess you're going to have to sell the BMW and give notice to the country club and kick whatever fashion drug you're on. Because if you think that after all the bridges you've burned, after all the crap you've put this family through for the past 10 years, that any of us are going to support you, that any of us are going to give you a single red dime, you're nuts," Walt says. This conversation is so heated. I mean, Walt really does not seem to like Ransom whatsoever, despite earlier telling the detectives, "Ransom's a good kid, we love him." He's literally acting the opposite now. The detectives and Marta just watch this entire interaction go down, and they just cannot believe how insane this family is. It truly feels like none of them are good people. Maybe Meg, she seems to be the most understanding and polite one, but still, this family is insane. It was so funny during the scene because when Walt was telling Ransom that he's gonna have to sell the BMW and like give up all his expensive, Ransom was like sarcastically listening to him, being like, yeah, and what else am I gonna have to sell? Like, of course, not even caring. Like, he doesn't even acknowledge the gravity of the situation, that now he is officially cut out of the will. He's not gonna have any money. He's not gonna have any financial support anymore, but he's just sitting there sarcastically being like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to sell it. Like, he just doesn't care. Anyways, Detective Blanc and Marta decide to go outside to get some fresh air. And that's when they're greeted by one of the dogs who has a piece of the trellis in his mouth. Remember earlier, one of the dogs had brought that to Marta. She threw it back into the woods behind the detective's back. But now one of the dogs went back and got it thinking that they were playing fetch. And now it literally brought this huge piece of evidence to Detective Blanc's feet. What do we have here? Detective Blanc says. This looks like a relatively fresh break. Oh yeah, it goes right up there in that trellis. But where does that trellis lead to? Wait, where does that window lead to? Detective Blanc says, finally realizing that there's a trick window. The two go back inside. Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner run after them. They all head upstairs to the 3rd floor, and that's when Marta has no other choice but to reveal to detectives that yes, there is a trick window. She shows them where the window is, and Detective Blanc pulls out his magnifying glass and he starts like looking on the ground, looking like anywhere for clues. And that's when he finds traces of mud on the windowsill and on the carpet. They take some samples to test in the lab, and this just proves to all of the detectives that something suspicious is actually going on. It's no longer just a theory or just, an idea. This proves that someone snuck in here. Before, it was just Detective Blanc that thought this wasn't a suicide. But now, knowing that there was a trick window and that someone snuck up here the night of Harlan's death, it definitely raises red flags. So on the night of the party, someone who did not want to be heard climbing those steps went to a great deal of trouble to break into Harlan Thrombey's rooms, Detective Blanc says. The group then goes back downstairs to attend the will reading, and Alan thanks everyone for getting together. He says that this isn't legally necessary, but since everyone is in town and some people are leaving soon, he thought it would be better if the entire family got together for the will reading. Actually, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to gently request that you all stay in town until the investigation is completed, Detective Blanc interrupts. Well, he's gently requesting, but I'm gonna have to make that an official order. No one move until we figure this out, Detective Elliot adds. Wait, why? Joni says. The entire Thrombey family is so confused as to why they can't leave town when, again, since the very beginning, Harlan's death has been labeled as a suicide. He died over a week ago, so why are police still on this? Detective Blanc doesn't want to explain to them that now they suspect Harlan was murdered, so instead he just tells Alan to continue the will reading and that they'll talk about this later. Okay, well, anyways, the other reason why I thought this gathering would be beneficial is because Harlan altered his will a week before he died. He sealed it. He asked me not to submit it to the courts for probate until after his death. So if anyone is confused by anything, we're together now and we can talk through it. Now, as he's saying this, the entire family looks back at Ransom, who is sitting by himself in a corner. They all look back at him because they're like, yeah, you're the reason why Harlan altered his will a week before he died. Anyways, the will reading continues and they explain that Harlan had 3 main assets: the house, $60 million, and of course his real asset, the publishing company. Now, each family member thinks that they're going to get their own piece of the pie, right? Linda assumes that she's going to be given the house. Joni assumes that she's going to be given a big chunk of that $60 million. And Walt assumes that he's going to inherit the publishing company. I mean, that arrangement would make sense, right? I, Harlan Thrombey, being of sound mind and body, hereby direct all my assets, both liquid and otherwise, I leave in their entirety to Marta Cabrera. My entire ownership of Blood Like Wine Publishing, I leave in its entirety to Marta Cabrera. The copyright of its catalog, I also leave to Marta Cabrera. As soon as these words slip out of Alan's mouth, the entire family starts freaking out. Walt stands up with his cane and he's like, wait, what? No, there's no way that can be right. Can I please see that, Alan? Yeah, sure, Alan says as he hands him the will. The entire family gathers around Walt, staring at this like tiny little piece of paper, and they're like, wait, it's right. Harlan left his money and the publishing company to Marta. No, there has to be a mistake. I mean, he wasn't of sound mind when he did this. He was on medication. I mean, come on, this doesn't make sense. We're his family. We deserve everything. The family starts like hovering over Alan, explaining to him that this is not right and that he needs to overturn this. Meanwhile, Marta is just in shock. She is standing in the back of the room with Detective Blanc and she does not know how to react. She honestly can't believe that those words just came out of Alan's mouth. Ransom gets up from his chair and he just starts laughing at the chaos his family is creating over the will. He leaves the house, he laughs in Marta's face because this is just so funny to him. The fact that his granddad left all of his inheritance, all of his money, I mean everything he owned to, as he says, his Brazilian nurse. Again, Marta isn't even Brazilian. Now, Linda is just not having it. She tells the detectives to get out of this house and she warns Alan that they are going to fight this. We are the Thrombies. This is still our house, so get out, she says. But then she pauses and she turns back to Alan. Wait, this is still our house, right? Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention this, Alan says, and he starts reading the paper again. Likewise, the house and all their belongings I leave to Marta Cabrera. So that's it. All of Harlan's assets are officially going to Marta. The house, the money, the publishing company, everything. This is what really sets Linda off because she always believed that she was going to get the house. You little she says, pointing her finger in Marta's face. Richard tries to hold her back and is like, all right, calm down, we'll talk this out. But Linda starts scolding Marta and literally accuses her of sleeping with Harlan to get his money. Detective Blanc tells Marta to run out, go back home, give this family some space. So she starts making her way out of the house. Again, still in shock over what just happened. I mean, she can't believe this either. Joni calmly follows after her and tries to calmly tell her, listen, sorry, I know that was overwhelming, but you can talk to me. This is crazy. We have to figure something out. And again, she's saying this in a very mellow tone, but Marta, again, just ignores her because she's in complete shock. Soon, the rest of the family joins her outside. They try to stop her from getting inside her car. They're literally blocking her car door. I mean, it's absolute chaos. Marta breaks through the crowd. She gets into her car. She turns it on, but it doesn't work. For some reason, the car isn't working, so she's freaking out, trapped in this car, surrounded by this chaotic family who is telling her to give up the inheritance. But suddenly, someone comes and saves her. Yes, it's Ransom. He pulls up in his BMW and tells Marta to get out of her car. Now, Marta doesn't really trust him. I mean, she doesn't really know Ransom that well. All she knows is that he's an asshole, but what other choice does she have right now? It's either sit in this car and wait for the family to break in, or get out and figure out a plan later. So Marta decides to get out of the car and jump into Ransom's passenger seat. The two drive away and the family starts shouting at Ransom now to pull over, and they're just confused as to why he's helping Marta escape, but it's no use. Ransom and Marta are long gone now. Richard, why didn't you stop her? Linda asks, annoyed. What was I supposed to do? Grab the bumper with my teeth? Frustrated, the family goes back into the house to speak to Alan about what they can do about this will. This scene was so funny, you guys. The way everyone was just hovering over Marta, everyone telling her different things. There was Joni on one end being like, Marta, don't listen to anybody. You can talk to me, we're friends, blah, blah, blah. Trying to calm her down. But then there's Linda on the other side being like, give me my money back. You were boinking my dad. You're a slut. All this. It was just the funniest scene ever. And then to have Ransom circle back and save Marta and tell her, get in the car and helping her escape his horrendous family was just the best part of the movie. So anyways, while Marta and Ransom are driving away from this scene, Marta is trying to catch her breath because that was just so chaotic. And Ransom is just laughing next to her. He finds this entire situation so funny. The two pull up to this cozy little restaurant, and honestly, this entire town seems cozy. There's a little fireplace inside the restaurant. It has candles all over the place. It's just a very cozy setup. And then Ransom is wearing this knitted white sweater, and the sweater looks really good on him. The two sit down at a table. Ransom orders them a bowl of beans and sausage. He orders a beer, and he tells Marta that everything will be okay now and that she can relax. You look like you're going to pass out. Have you eaten anything today? He says as he hands Marta the bowl of beans and sausages. She grabs the bowl. She starts stuffing her face. So did he tell you anything about the will? She asks. Only that I wasn't getting a cent, Ransom responds. Well, that's because he wanted you to build something from the ground up. Like your mom, she says. Oh, yeah, something from the ground up like my mom. My mom built her business from the ground up with $1 million loan from my grandfather. Yeah, my father owns none of the business. She made him sign a prenup and he lives in fear every single day. I know that's what my grandfather was trying to protect me from by doing this. And I know I shouldn't say this out loud, but when he told me I was cut from the will, Jesus, I could have killed him. So now we know how Linda built her business from the ground up, as she says. Earlier in the movie, she was telling detectives that she's not like her siblings, that things weren't handed to her like Walt, that she built this herself. But now it's revealed that she didn't actually build this herself. Her dad gave her a head start by lending her $1 million, which that's not something that every parent can do for their child. So of course that helped her, make this business so successful, but still she likes to tell people that she did it all on her own. Anyways, Ransom goes on to tell Marta that he knows his grandpa did not end his life. He says, "I don't think it, I know it, because I knew my granddad and maybe you and I were the only two who actually knew him. So you're not gonna fool me on this because I know lying makes you puke because of that game we played on 4th of July. And I know you just ate a full plate of baked beans and sausage. So look me in the eye and tell me what happened to my grandfather," Ransom says as he hands Marta the extra bowl to puke in. Marta looks at this and she's like, "You asshole, like he did this on purpose," but she has no other choice but to reveal to Ransom exactly what happened. She tells him the 100% truth, how she mixed up the medicine, how they made this entire plan to cover up her tracks, everything. Ransom sits there and you can tell they've had a couple of beers by now. He's just completely shocked by this revelation. He just cannot believe that his granddad didn't actually take his own life. But honestly, the most shocking part to Ransom is the fact that Marta could beat Harlan at the game Go. Like, out of everything that Marta just revealed, how she overdosed him on morphine, how she pretended to be Harlan walking around the house, everything, the one part that really stood out to Ransom was that she could beat him at that game. I always thought I was the only one that could beat him at Go. I always thought that meant something. That night at the party, my last conversation with my grandpa, my last argument, that's what he told me about you, that you beat him at Go more than I did, and I thought, what a strange thing to tell me. "I think I get it now," Ransom says. "Look, I'm gonna help you get away with this, okay?" Marta is confused as to why he would want to help her get away with murder, but he says that this is what his grandpa wanted. He wanted to give her this money. He wanted her to get away with it, and once she gets the money, she can give, Ransom his part of the inheritance. So in his mind, everybody wins. Marta gets her money, he gets his money, and Harlan's final wish comes true. Now, meanwhile, back at the house, the entire family has cornered Alan into the living room and are holding him hostage, basically, until he overturns the will. They're not actually holding him hostage, but basically. They start bringing up different theories as to why Harlan made this change, but Alan says that none of these theories matter. If they can't prove that Harlan wasn't in sound mind when he altered his will in court, then there's just no case. "Well, what about the Slayer rule?" Joni asks. "Yeah, what about it?" "Yeah, if someone is convicted of killing the person, then they don't get the inheritance," Joni says. "Well, that doesn't really apply here," Alan responds, "because Harlan took his own life." Now, as soon as Alan says this, the entire family turns back to Detective Blanc, who is still there. You guys, Detective Blanc just practically moved into this house. He's just loitering around the house, looking at everybody's private secrets, private drawers. He really has no sense of boundaries, so it's so funny how he's just still there. So he is sitting down behind them quietly at a chair in front of the fireplace, and the family immediately moves over to approach Detective Blanc, and they ask him, "Wait, you told us we couldn't leave town. Why is that? Has something changed in the investigation?" "Yes, something has changed. I now suspect that there was foul play involved," Detective Blanc answers. "Wait, so do you think Marta did something?" Richard asks. "Well, I haven't ruled anyone out yet," Detective Blanc responds, but he assures them that he will get to the bottom of this. Richard just tells him that he's full of shit. He honestly doesn't believe anything that Detective Blanc is saying. He then tells Alan, "God bless you, but you're useless. Get out of here." Alan's like, "Thank God," because Alan has just been sitting there for the past who knows how many hours, just repeating to the family that there's nothing they can do to overturn the will. So Alan grabs his things, he packs everything up, and he finally exits the house. Richard tells the family that the only option is for Martha to renounce the inheritance. Yes, that's the perfect plan, the family says. "We get her to renounce the inheritance. It's the right thing to do." Now Meg just stares at her family have this very weird conversation, and she honestly looks disgusted at them. She pulls her mom Joni to the side and tells her that if this is what Grandpa wanted, then Marta should get to keep her money. "Meg, do you think this is actually what your grandpa wanted? Your grandpa loved us. He would want to take care of us. He wanted you to get an education. Do you think I can pay for your college? I can't," she says as she turns back to the group. Now this is when Megan's entire demeanor changes. At first, she wanted Marta to get this money because, again, that's what her grandpa wanted. But now hearing that she might have to drop out of college because her mom can't afford it, that frightens her. Back at the restaurant, Marta gets a call from Meg. "Look, no one knows I'm calling you, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how crazy my family acted," Meg tells her. "Also, I wanted to ask you, what are you gonna do?" "Do about what?" Marta responds. "Well, about the will. What are you going to do?" This is when Marta starts to think suspiciously of Meg. "Well, what do you think I should do?" I think that you should do whatever you think is right, but I think that you should give it back to us, Meg says. Look, Granddad always took care of us. You know, we're his family, and I know he was like family to you, but we're his actual family. I figured you knew that this isn't fair. Look, we've always been good to you, and you are like family, and we will take care of you, but you have to make things right, Meg says. Marta looks so annoyed at this conversation, and Ransom is just sitting there across from her staring back, wondering what Marta's going to do. I mean, earlier, again, everyone was telling Marta that she was like a part of this family, that they want to take care of her, that she's actually one of them. Meg was even telling her that earlier, but now here's Meg saying, I know you think that you're family, but we're his actual family. I mean, these people are insane. They think that just because they're blood, that automatically makes them like true family members, when none of them really paid attention to Harlan. They kind of used him for his money, for his resources, but you know, Marta was there for him. She was taking care of him, of course, medically, but she was also a friend to him. So it seems like she was more family than they were. Meg then tells her that her mom said she's going to have to drop out of school. And this is when Marta starts to feel really bad for her and tells her, no, listen, Meg, I'm not going to let that happen. We're going to figure this out, but whatever money you need, I'll give it to you. I just want to make sure that you don't drop out of school, Marta says. So again, it seems like she's not really willing to give up the inheritance. I promise I'll take care of you, Marta says before hanging up the phone. Meg looks so surprised by this conversation because now Marta is the one handling them. Now they're the ones that have to beg Marta for money. Meg turns around and sees her entire family just staring at her, waiting to see what she has to say about the conversation. So she was lying to Marta. The entire family knew that she was going to call her, and this was like a planned thing. They were hoping that Meg would be able to sway Marta into giving up the money. So anyways, they hang up the phone. Ransom tells Marta to just lay low for a couple of days and that eventually this entire thing will blow over and that it'll be okay. The next morning, Marta is woken up by her sister Alice, who comes barging into her room asking her what the heck is going on with their lives. She tells her that there's now reporters outside the building, that there's lawyers sending them letters about who knows what, and she even asks like, wait, Marta, are we rich now? Marta's like, wait, she's like barely waking up. She's like, maybe we might be rich. And she goes to pick up her phone and sees that she has 28 missed phone calls. Outside in the living room, Marta's mom is watching the news and there's literally news coverage about Marta getting this inheritance. Harlan was one of the most like well-known famous authors of all time. So of course, the news is going to report about the fact that he left his entire inheritance, his entire legacy to his nurse. Marta just looks at all of this. She looks at the reporters outside her apartment. She looks at the news coverage about her. And she is so confused, and of course, so is her mom. Her mom tells her that she's scared about all this publicity because now there's attorneys knocking at the door, and again, her mom is here illegally. So if they get too much legal attention on them, her mom could get deported. Marta tells her that everything will be okay, and she grabs a pile of mail and exits the back door to avoid the reporters. However, when she makes it out the back door, she is met with Walt. Somehow he figured out that there was a back entrance and he was just waiting there for her. Hey, how are you doing? Walt asks. Walt, I want you to know that I didn't know about any of this. We know you didn't. I mean, we all kind of went a little bit crazy yesterday, Walt says. Yeah, that's understandable, Marta responds. She then looks down at the pile of envelopes from different attorneys and accountants and things like that she hasn't even opened yet. And Walt tells her to be careful with all of these, letters because it could be lawyers and banks reaching out to her to help her handle this new money and that they could be trapping her. So, Marta, is it your intention to renounce the inheritance? He asks. No, I mean, this is what Harlan wanted, she says. Yeah, but I mean, Harlan put you in a very difficult position here. I mean, it was unfair of him. I mean, you see this kind of press and scrutiny that this kicks up and, with your mother. My mother? Marta says. Yeah, I mean, this could be bad for your mom's situation, Walt says, again referring to the fact that she's here illegally. Wait, what did Meg tell you? Marta says. It seems like nobody else in the family knew about, her mom's legal status except for Meg because again, they were friends. So did Meg just betray Marta and reveal this to her family to use against her? Oh, no, she didn't tell us anything, but listen, we can help you. With our resources, we can help you get the right lawyers and we can save your mom. Walt says. So you're saying that even if it came to light with your family's resources, you could help me fix it? Marta says. Yes, of course, with the right lawyers. We can get you the best attorneys, New York lawyers, DC lawyers, he says. Okay, good, Marta responds, because Harlan gave me all your resources. So that means that now with my new resources that belong to me, I'll be able to fix it. So I guess I will find the right lawyers, Marta says before sneaking back into her apartment. Which is so true. I mean, what was the point of them trying to scare her and threaten her when she literally has all of their resources now, so she has enough money to fix this. It's insane what Walt was doing. I mean, he was basically threatening to deport her mom if she didn't give up the inheritance. It's just extremely evil. So anyways, Marta goes back into her apartment. She starts going through all of the mail, and that's when she finds a suspicious envelope. This doesn't look like a letter from an accountant or from an attorney. This looks like something more personal. She opens the envelope, and inside is a copy of the medical examiner's report for Harlan. But it's not the full copy though. It's just a copy of the top half of the page that says, that this is a toxicology report for Harlan Thrombey, which of course, this is going to reveal that Marta gave him the wrong medication, which will mean that she's guilty of murder. Marta freaks out when she sees this. She's like, oh my God, someone's trying to blackmail me? Like, this is crazy. So she heads over to Ransom's house and she shows him the blackmail. Ransom looks at this and he's like, wait, what is the purpose of this blackmail letter? Because first of all, it didn't show the full toxicology report, and this person didn't ask to meet at a certain location. They didn't ask for any ransom money. They didn't put anything on this paper. All it said was, I know what you did. Now, side note, Ransom's house is stunning. Like, it's insane. It's like this huge modern house in the middle of the woods with these giant glass windows. You can tell that he lives such a luxurious life. And like everyone said, he's never had a job before, so he's never had to work for any of this. I honestly believe he's just lived off his grandpa his entire life. And again, now that his inheritance is cut off, he has to help Marta get away with this so that he can keep up with this lavish lifestyle. So the two sit there at his living room and they're just so confused by this like random blackmail scheme. Like, what are they trying to do with this? So the two decide to drive over to the medical examiner's office to see if maybe they can steal the toxicology report and burn it. However, when they pull up to the medical examiner's office, it seems like somebody already beat them to it. The entire building has been burned down. Yeah, the entire building, which is just so insane and so suspicious. Of course, Detective Elliot and Detective Blanc are already there because they were also waiting for the toxicology report on Harlan Thrombey to determine whether or not this was murder or suicide. So the fact that the medical examiner's office was burned last night is incredibly suspicious to the detectives. Marta and Ransom are sitting in her car, just like hiding behind the steering wheel so that, of course, Detective Blanc and the other detectives won't spot them. However, now that the medical examiner's office has been burned, they realize that the only person that has a copy of that toxicology report is a blackmailer. Marta starts freaking out. I mean, she doesn't know what to do. And Ransom tells her, okay, well, did you get any other text messages, any phone calls, any emails from the blackmailer? Maybe they sent you another message telling you where to meet or, an actual ransom note. Marta decides to check her email, and that's when she sees it. She's like, oh my God, yes, the blackmailer emailed me this morning. The blackmailer told her to meet at 1209 Columbus Road at 10 a.m. And it's now currently 9:37. So she only has 20 minutes to get to this location or else the blackmailer will expose everything. You know what this means, right? If you destroy that copy, you're in the clear, Ransom says. But Marta can't even focus on this because she is just staring outside at Detective Blanc, who has now spotted them there. Detective Blanc starts approaching their car because, of course, he wants to know why they're here. I mean, why are they at the medical examiner's office? They really have no reason to be here. So he starts getting closer to the car, but Marta decides to hit the gas pedal and she starts speeding away. Detective Blanc realizes that Marta's making a run for it, which of course is so suspicious. So he tells Detective Elliot to get in the car and they literally start chasing after her. This part was hilarious to me because they started a high-speed chase on the freeway, but Marta's car is so tiny that no matter how hard she pushes on the gas pedal, the car just does not go fast. Ransom yells at her to start flooring it and she's like, I'm literally flooring it. But the car is literally going like 40 miles an hour. So of course the other detectives catch up to her immediately because she's literally not speeding. At this point, there's like 3 or 4 cop cars chasing after them with the lights on, the sirens, everything. So this is a full-on car chase. Detective Blanc starts calling Marta, but she just ignores his phone call and continues driving away. Then, of course, because her car is going so slow, he literally pulls up next to her while he's calling her because that's how slow she's going. So he pulls up next to her as they're driving and he's like, answer your phone, like so we can talk about this. But again, she just ignores him. Marta tells Ransom like, okay, this is it. Like, we're caught. I'm just gonna pull over and just tell them everything. But Ransom tells her that if she misses her chance to meet with the blackmailer, then this is over. She needs to get that toxicology report. So Marta makes a quick decision to make a quick turn. She goes into a more residential neighborhood where the streets are filled with cars and people. So she's zooming through everybody. She is speeding through back alleys, and she thinks that she finally lost the police when she pulls into a back alley parking lot. She parks a car and she's like, oh my gosh, I have so much adrenaline right now. I feel like I swallowed bees. Okay, so where's the address? 1209 Columbus Road. Ransom says, okay, I'm just gonna give the blackmailer whatever they want. I'll say yes to anything. I just need to get that report back. Yes, get it back and destroy it, Ransom says. Ransom, thank you so much for helping me. I mean, I couldn't do this without you, Marta says. And just when they think that they're in the clear, suddenly Detective Blanc is there knocking on Marta's car window. Marta looks at him surprised. She's like, wait, I thought I lost the cops? I mean, Marta really thought that she was having like a baby driver moment, but no. The police caught up to her. They tell them to get out of the car. Marta and Ransom exit the car with their hands in the air, and Detective Elliot is really upset about this. He's like, that was the dumbest car chase of all time. Put your hands down. Then Detective Blanc reveals why he was chasing after them in the first place. He reveals that he spoke to Great Nana earlier that day, and that she revealed that the night of the party, she saw someone climbing the trellis to the 3rd floor. Now, remember, Marta saw Great Nana that night in the window while she was climbing the trellis down, but she mistook her for Ransom. At this point, Great Nana has never really spoken more than like 2 words, so the fact that she was able to sit down with Detective Blanc and reveal what she saw that night was like truly shocking. Mr. Drysdale, come with us, Detective Elliot says, referring to Ransom. Yep, let's go, pat him down, check him out, they say. Wait, what's going on? Marta asks, clearly confused because she's the one that saw Great Nana that night. Well, Ransom came back, is what Great Nana told me, Detective Blanc says. I don't know what he came back to do, but we'll find out. Did he ask you to start driving and running away when he saw me coming at you at the medical examiner's office? Detective Blanc asks. Marta lies and she's like, yeah, he told me to start driving as quickly as I could. Of course, this is a lie. Marta thought that they were coming after her, but it turns out that they were trying to chase down Ransom this entire time to question him. The detectives think that Marta was just like an innocent hostage being forced to drive away by Ransom, and of course she's gonna go along with this. Oh my gosh, this is just so insane. Marta is just so confused by the situation because, I mean, Great Nana must have made a mistake. She must have thought that she was Ransom, and now Ransom is going to be punished for this crime that he didn't actually commit. So now Marta is worried that Ransom is going to go down for something that he didn't do. Detective Elliot drives off with Ransom handcuffed in the car, but Detective Blanc says that he'll just get a ride with Marta. Marta quickly gets in her car. She pukes in like this big gulp cup that she has there, and Detective Blanc sits down in the passenger seat. He tells her to start driving to the police station, and he says, listen, I want a full rundown on everything Ransom told you. I'll catch you up on where we're at, he says. This case is just so strange. I mean, it's a case with a hole in the middle. It's a donut case. I know this sounds random, but I'm just talking through my process here. Let me know if this is boring you, Detective Blanc says as he tries to understand this really complicated case in his mind. But I feel the noose tightening. The family is truly desperate. They have desperate motives, the mystery of who hired me, the impossibility of the crime, and yet a donut. One central piece, and if it reveals itself, the fog would lift. The arc would resolve, the slinky become unkinked. So Detective Blanc goes on saying this really crazy, elaborate speech. Again, he just is so funny. He's such an interesting character because everything he says is very elaborate. It's very whimsical. It's very quirky. None of it really makes sense. So he's sitting there talking about how this case is like a donut hole with a hole within a hole. I don't even know what he's saying, but Marta's not even listening to him. She just interrupts him and says, do you mind if I stop for a second? I need to pick something up. I'll be very quick. I'm sure, Detective Blanc says, which didn't really make sense to me because they're supposed to be going to the police station right now for her to give a witness statement about Ransom basically holding her hostage and forcing her to go on this, highway chase. But yeah, Detective Blanc just lets her stop and do a quick errand in the middle of an investigation. That didn't make sense. Now, as we know, the errand that Marta needs to go do is literally go meet with a blackmailer. So she pulls up to the location. She tells Detective Blanc that she'll be right back. And then she enters a hair salon. But instead of hanging out at the hair salon, she exits through the back door and goes to the laundromat next door, which is where the blackmailer told her to meet. Now, this laundromat is completely abandoned. There's a bunch of old laundry machines lining the walls. There's dirt everywhere. And then in the center of the room, there's a chair with a person sitting on it, but we can't see who this person is yet. Listen, I don't know what you want. Whatever it is, we can work it out, Marta says. She gets a little bit closer to this person sitting on the chair. It's a very dark room, so we can only see their shadow. Marta can't even tell who this person is, and the shadow isn't even moving. She continues walking towards them, and that's when she stumbles upon her medical bag on the ground. "Listen, we have to figure this out right here, right now. I'm leaving with that report," she demands. But still, there's no response. "Hello?" Marta says as she pulls out her flashlight to unveil the shadow, and that's when she sees that the blackmailer is Fran, the housekeeper. But she doesn't seem to be alive. Fran is sitting there with a spider crawling on her face, completely frozen. I mean, it looks like Fran had a heart attack or overdose. She's literally just sitting there, frozen in place. Marta lets out a gasp. She drops her phone to the ground and she starts freaking out. "Oh my God, Fran! Oh my God, Fran, can you hear me? Fran, give me a sign if you can hear me." Fran starts to come to a little bit and she's like, "You." "Yes, it's me, Marta," she says. "You called me here. You sent me an email. You're blackmailing me. That's why I'm here." "Fran, did you take something?" "Look, I'm going to call an ambulance, okay? You're gonna be okay," Marta reassures her. She puts Fran on the ground and she starts, looking through her medical bag to see if she can help her with anything, but she also gets her phone ready to call 911. Fran can barely function at this point. She can barely form a sentence, but all she manages to say is, "Copy." "Wait, copy? What are you talking about?" Marta says. "Copy, stash." "Wait, what are you saying?" "You did this. You won't get away with this," Fran says before completely passing out. Marta starts freaking out. She's like, "I didn't do this. I didn't make you overdose or whatever the heck is going on right now." She has no idea what Fran did, but still, she decides to call 911 and report her friend's overdose. Now, meanwhile, Detective Blanc is sitting outside the hair salon listening to some music on his headphones, completely unaware of what's going on inside the building. Suddenly, he sees the ambulance pull up, he sees the sirens, and he's like, "Oh my gosh," and he gets out of the car. The paramedics take Fran to the hospital, and Marta and Detective Blanc sit down in the waiting room. Blanc is on the phone with Detective Elliot, and he's like, "All right, my friend, thank you for the update. I'll bring her once we get word that the housekeeper is stable." Marta is sitting down next to him. She's shaking her leg, and she's just so done with this stupid plan. This is over. People are getting hurt now, so it's time to tell the truth, she tells Detective Blanc. The secret has just been so heavy, and again, people are literally dying, people are getting blackmailed, buildings are being burned down. I mean, this lie has completely spiraled out of control, and Martha's just ready to come out with the truth. "I know the truth. Ransom just told Detective Elliot everything," Blanc says. "Good. Wait, I hope he didn't try to cover for me. Did he tell you the truth about me switching the—" "Yep," Blanc says. "And then me wearing the disguise?" "Yep. The whole blackmail thing and everything?" "Yep, he told him everything," Detective Blanc says. Marta feels like a weight has been lifted off her shoulders, but she's still just so confused as to why Fran would take her morphine from her medical bag and overdose. She starts brainstorming, thinking maybe Fran had a drug addiction, that maybe she swiped the bag from the house after Harlan's death and was now blackmailing her to get more money for her drug addiction. But still, that theory doesn't really make sense, but regardless, Marta tells Detective Blanc that she wants to tell the Thrombies the truth herself. She wants to tell them exactly what happened the night their father died. She feels like she owes it to them. "Look, I don't think that's a good idea," Detective Blanc says, but Marta insists. "Listen, I gave my number to the doctor, so if anything changes with Fran, they'll call me. Let's go back to the house. I want to confess to the family." "Okay, sounds good. I'll round up the Thrombies at the house along with the police escort, for their arrest after," Detective Blanc says. "Now, you can tell me your full version on the drive over because I don't want any more surprises," he adds. The two finally make it back to the Thrombey mansion. They pull up to the driveway and Marta ends her conversation by saying, "And that's it. That's the whole truth. That's exactly what happened." Detective Blanc makes note of her confession. They walk inside the house, and that's when they are greeted by Walt, Richard, and basically the rest of the family. "Oh, so she has finally come to her senses, huh?" Richard says sarcastically. "Well, duh, she's standing right there, Richard, so she can speak for herself," Walt says. "Is the rest of the family here?" Detective Blanc asks. "Yep, they're all in the living room." "Perfect. I think that it would be better if we were together again and we can just get this over with," Detective Blanc says as he heads into the living room. Marta stands there just preparing herself for what she's about to do. She's about to confess to this horrific, very intense, cruel family that she killed their dad and that now she inherited all their money. So it's obviously not going to be an easy conversation. "Hey," Megan says as she approaches Marta. "I'm so sorry I told them about your mom," she says as she leans in for a hug. Now, it's kind of awkward between them because, again, it seems like they were genuine friends, but Meg literally revealed to her evil family that Marta's mom was here illegally, which they were now using against her. So, of course, it's awkward between them, but, Marta seems to forgive her. Gosh, I am so raiding Fran's stash when this is over, Meg says. Wait, stash? Marta thinks to herself, and then it hits her. I know where the tox report is, Marta tells Blanc. She then leads him to the second living room. She approaches the clock above the fireplace, opens a drawer underneath, revealing Fran's stash of, substances and of the tox report. She basically told me where it was, Marta says, because remember, when Fran was overdosing, she told Marta, copy stash. She was telling her that she left a copy of the report in her stash. Marta hands a report over to Blanc, which is crazy because that's the final piece of the puzzle. That tox report will prove that Marta gave Harlan the wrong medication and she will go to prison for murder. Gosh, I can't believe I just handed you this. You're not much of a detective, are you? She asks. Now, it is kind of funny and ironic that she says this because it's kind of true. This entire time, Marta has been hiding evidence. She's been tampering with the crime scene. She's been lying, etc., right under Detective Blanc's nose, and he had no idea. Well, to be pretty fair, you make a pretty lousy murderer. Perhaps we deserve each other, he sarcastically responds. The two then head over to the main living room, and Marta stands in front of the Thrombies, ready to confess. Okay, you've always been good to me, and what I'm about to say next isn't going to be easy, and you're going to be upset, but I think that you deserve to hear it from me, Marta says. Now the Thrombies are all sitting there in front of her, staring very intensely back at Marta. Even Ransom is there with Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner. I'm not sure if they took him down to the police station to question him and then brought him back to the house, or why exactly they're back there, but everyone is just standing there looking at Marta so intensely. However, before Marta can continue her confession, Detective Blanc interrupts her after he finally opens a toxicology report. Excuse me, you have not been good to her. You have all treated her like crap to steal back a fortune that you lost and she deserves. You're a pack of vultures at the feast, knives out, beaks bloody. Well, you're not getting bailed out. Not this time, he says. Everyone stares back at Blanc completely confused. He then goes on to explain that Marta has decided to keep the inheritance, and Marta tries to stop him from continuing on, but he goes on to say that he will give his professional recommendation to the local authorities that the manner of death in the case of Harlan Thrombey is 100% ruled as a suicide. Case closed, he says. Again, everyone is in shock. Even Detective Elliot and Trooper Wagner are like, wait, what? We thought it was a suicide from the beginning. You came in and told us that it was a murder investigation. Now you're telling us that it is a suicide? It's just so confusing. So the detectives and Marta follow Blanc into the library where this whole movie began. I mean, this is where the investigation truly started. And now it seems like it's going to end here. Blanc, what's going on here? Elliot asks. I'm sorry. Listen, Trooper Wagner, can you get the family out of this room, out of the house? But stand by with your additional officer. And then he whispers something in his ear that we don't get to hear. Trooper Wagner clears the home, and now it's just Detective Elliot, Detective Blanc, and Marta in the library. Marta is just so confused about what's going on. She reiterates to Blanc that she's telling the truth, that she did actually kill Harlan. Yes, you killed him. Yes, you are guilty, blah, blah, blah. But then he goes on to talk about the donut again, the one that he was talking about earlier in the car. How the plan that Harlan/Marta created seems to fit perfectly in the hole of this donut. But when they look closer, the donut hole has its own hole in its center. Why was I hired? He says. Why would someone hire me? Well, it was someone fishing for a crime to reverse the will, Elliot adds. Yes, but I was hired before the sealed will was read, so yes, someone hired me to reverse the will, but that person must have known the contents of the will before it was unsealed, which means that that same person must have known that a crime was committed. And further, if the intent was to reverse Martha's inheritance, they must have known that Marta was responsible. Blanc explains, which everything that he is saying makes 100% sense. How would someone know that Marta committed a crime and that she was in the will? Who knew that? Well, Marta explains that it was Fran, that she knew that she made the mistake with the medications and that she was blackmailing her. But Detective Blanc isn't convinced. Marta, this will not be easy for you to hear. But there is at least one truly guilty party behind everything, Blanc says. Trooper Wagner, he calls out. Wagner comes back into the library with Ransom. Marta, I'm so sorry. I told them everything. I figured it was up, Ransom says. It's fine. I'm glad you told them the truth, Marta reassures him. Well, not exactly the truth though, Blanc says. Look, I know Great Nana told you that she saw Ransom the night of the murder, but she was wrong. It was me that she saw, not him. Yeah, we'll get to that, Blanc says. In the meantime, Mr. Hugh Ransom Drysdale, why don't you tell us why you hired me? Huh? What are you talking about? Ransom asks. Yeah, you're right. Let's back it up a bit, Blanc says. And then this is when we get into this amazing monologue by Blanc. He explains this case beautifully and he wraps it up for us so well. This was one of my favorite parts of the movie. He just explained this case so intensely. He was moving throughout the library, doing these different poses. He was standing in front of the wheel of knives. He was sitting down in front of it. I mean, it just seems like Blanc was having the time of his life fully explaining this crime and solving the case. He reveals that the night of the party, Harlan told Ransom everyone was cut out of the will. Now, Marta, remind me what Ransom said his conversation with Harlan ended with? Well, he told me at the restaurant that Harlan told him that I could beat him at Go. Right, and I asked myself, why would your name be brought up during an argument between Harlan and Ransom? Well, there's one obvious explanation, Blanc says. Harlan revealed to Ransom that all of his money would be going right to Marta. That's right, Ransom knew the truth all along. Him acting surprised during the reading of the will was just an act, but of course he doesn't admit that to Detective Blanc. He just denies it and says, that's some heavy-duty conjecture. I mean, yeah, but it's the only way that what comes next makes sense, Blanc responds. He explains that after storming out of Harlan's office and driving away, he didn't actually go home like he told Marta. Nope, he turned around and decided to sneak back into the house through the side gate by climbing the trellis and sneaking in through the trick window. He wasn't going to let his granddad ruin his life this way. Ransom felt entitled to that money. He felt entitled to his inheritance, and he was determined to get revenge. So he climbed in through the trick window, went into Harlan's room, grabbed Marta's medical bag, and switched the medications. Yeah, this psycho of a grandson switched his grandpa's medication to kill him, all because he was written out of the will. It's just so horrifying. Now, you can tell that Ransom and his grandpa did have a special connection. Harlan told Marta that Ransom reminded him so much of himself. So yeah, they did have a special connection, and I'm sure they loved each other very much. But wow, it turns out that Ransom loved money more than his own grandpa. I mean, he literally killed him. So Ransom switched the medication, ensuring that when Marta injected him later that night, she would give Harlan 100 milligrams of morphine, not of his correct medication. And to ensure that his plan truly worked, he took the naloxone, the life-saving antidote. Now, Ransom didn't do this just to get revenge on Harlan. He did this so that the Slayer rule would apply and Marta would have to give the inheritance back. Marta listens to Detective Blanc explain this and she's like, no, that's not possible, because if Ransom switched the medications, then when I accidentally got them mixed up, I accidentally switched them back. Wait, so that means I gave Harlan the correct dose, Blanc says. Now, earlier, Blanc had placed 2 vials of medication on the coffee table, and during the conversation, Marta picked up the morphine bottle to show him oh no, this is what I gave, Harlan. Now, Blanc taped over the label of these vials, so there was no way for Marta to know which one was the morphine bottle, but still, she picked up the correct bottle because she's a good nurse and could recognize the difference of tincture and viscosity between the 2 medications. So when Harlan knocked the go board over that night, again, he knocked over all the medications as well. So without even thinking about it, Marta picked up the morphine labeled bottle and gave Harlan 100 milligrams of it. But again, Ransom switched the medication. So inside the morphine bottle was actually the good medicine that Marta knew just by the weight itself was the correct dose to give him. I hope that made sense. I know that was a little bit confusing in the movie, but basically Ransom switched the medication, but Marta switched it back when Harlan knocked it over. And again, because she's a good nurse, she could just tell by the weight that the liquid that was inside the morphine bottle was the good liquid to give to Harlan. Wait, so then Harlan was, she asks? Yes, I'm sorry, Marta, but Harlan was perfectly fine, Blanc says. His blood report was normal. His cause of death was truly suicide. If Harlan had just listened to you that night and called an ambulance, he would still be here today. That part of the movie just broke me. I literally had tears coming out of my eyes because I was like, wait, that's so sad. Of course, there was no way Marta could have known in that moment that he wasn't dying. However, I will get into this later on in the video towards the end when I discuss my issues with this movie. I feel like at that point, by the time he explained the plan and did all of this, more than like 10 minutes had gone by and he still hadn't experienced any symptoms. Because remember, Marta told him like in 6 minutes, you'll feel like dizziness, headache, vomit, whatever. Like he'll start to basically die in 6 minutes. Yet it feels like more than 6 minutes had passed by the time Harlan explained this plan. Yet he wasn't feeling dizzy. He wasn't feeling any symptoms. So I feel like Marta could have realized in that moment, like, wait, maybe he's not actually going to die and maybe we do have time to call an ambulance. Still, I know it's part of the movie plot, but regardless, Marta didn't know in the moment that he was dying. Now, still, this web of lies isn't done being untangled yet. Why did Great Nana say, "Ransom, are you back already?" Well, it's because she saw Ransom sneaking in when he went to switch the medication. But his plan wasn't over yet. Ransom had to go back later that night to switch the medications back. That way, when police would go to investigate, they would see that the medications were in their correct bottles and that nothing was tampered with. So he tried to get back into the house once the party was over, through the back gate. But this time he was met with the dogs, who we know do not like him. So the dogs started to bark, which woke Meg up. No worries, Ransom thought to himself. He'll just go back tomorrow morning to get the bottles. He assumed that Harlan would pass away in his sleep and that he would wake up to the news of a medical error and of a guilty nurse. But no, when Ransom woke up the next morning, that's not what he heard. Instead, he was told that his grandpa slit his throat and took his own life, which of course was so confusing to Ransom. He's like, wait, did Marta realize that she mixed the medication and she slit Harlan's throat to cover this crime up? Ransom just had no idea how this happened because again, he figured that his grandpa would just die in his sleep. But now hearing the news that his grandpa slit his throat, he's like, wait, what? Like, how did my plan completely deviate? So since he knew that a crime had been committed, that Marta had given Harlan the wrong medication, that's why he decided to hire Detective Benoit Blanc. Because again, he knew a crime had been committed and that this wasn't a suicide. He needs Marta to be found guilty so that the will be reversed. So he hires Blanc, he misses the funeral to sneak back into the house to switch the medications. However, Fran catches him doing this. She sees him go up to his attic, get the medicine bag, switch the medications, and doing all of this suspicious stuff. She doesn't know exactly what Ransom was doing, but she knew that it was not good. So that's why Fran decided to blackmail Ransom. She didn't send the copy of the tox report to Marta. She sent it to Ransom. Again, it wasn't the full copy of the report, just the header. So at that point, Ransom still thought that Marta had killed Harlan. So he goes to the will reading to see the family chaos, again feeling cocky that this will be reversed once the police get the tox report. Then, as we know, he helps Marta escape the family chaos. He takes her to that cozy restaurant. And then again, Marta reveals to him what actually happened. And that's when Ransom realizes that his plan didn't work. Marta didn't actually give Harlan the wrong medication, and the tox report will prove that, which means that Marta will get to keep the inheritance. That's when Ransom decided to create a new plan, to pretend to be an ally to Marta, to pretend to be her friend. He tells her that he'll help her get away with this, only if she gives him part of the inheritance. I mean, one way or another, Ransom was going to get his money. So he pretended to help Marta, but all along, he was the one blackmailing her. He was the one that sent her the note that Fran sent him. He's the one that emailed her the random rendezvous location that Fran sent him. I mean, this guy is completely insane. He was being blackmailed, but then he used his own blackmail to blackmail someone else. It's crazy. So anyways, he blackmails Marta, but still he has his own blackmail to deal with. So he does meet Fran at the laundromat, but instead of negotiating a deal with her, he just runs at her and injects her with a lethal dose of morphine. Again, this guy is insane. He's just killing people like it's no big deal. Fran goes unconscious. He grabs the tox report from her hands. He burns it so that there's no evidence of Marta's innocence. And then he goes back to framing Marta. Again, he was the one encouraging Marta to meet with her blackmailer so she could get the original copy of the tox report. Well, that was a setup. His plan was to have Marta show up at the laundromat, come across Fran's dead body, and then he was going to make an anonymous phone call to the police so that they would show up and catch Marta at the scene of a crime. Marta would then get arrested for killing both Fran and Harlan. Boom, Ransom gets his inheritance back. I know, this plan was insane. When Detective Blanc was revealing this, I was like, wait, this is actually crazy. The lengths that this guy was willing to go to is insane. He's truly a selfish, disgusting human who doesn't even care that he killed his own grandpa. Now he's killing the housekeeper. Now he's framing this innocent girl. It's just wild. So Marta, back in real time, listens to this huge revelation and she cannot believe that Ransom played her like this. She truly thought that Ransom wanted to help her. Of course, for his own selfish reasons, to get a piece of the pie still. But still, she truly thought that Ransom was an ally. Wait a second, before Fran passed out, she said, "You did this." She wasn't saying you, she was saying Hugh. She referred to you as Hugh because that's what you made the help call you. Because you're an asshole, Marta tells Ransom. Now, this entire plan would have worked if they hadn't gotten into that car chase and if police hadn't brought Ransom in for questioning. Because of that, he couldn't make that anonymous phone call about Fran's death. And on top of that, Marta called an ambulance to save Fran, and on top of that, Fran stashed a copy of the tox report under the clock. So there was just a lot of moving parts of Ransom's plan that were completely out of his control. So Fran's alive? Ransom asks. Oh yes, she is alive and she will confirm this very story, or something close to it, Blanc responds. Suddenly, Marta gets a phone call from the hospital. She left her number there so that they could give her updates on Fran, so she picks up the phone. Hello, doctor? Wow, that's great news. Yeah, we'll be there soon. Thanks, Marta says as she turns back to the group. It was the hospital. They told me that Fran is alive. She's okay and she's ready to talk. The detectives put Ransom in custody, but before they handcuff him, he turns to Marta. Listen, I'm gonna say this to you, just to you. No cameras, no courtrooms, just you, because you know it's true. We allowed you into our home. We let you watch our granddad. We welcomed you into our family. And now you think you can steal it from us? You think I'm not going to fight to protect my home? Our birthright, our ancestral family home? Ransom tells her this with honestly pure disgust in his voice. You can tell that he doesn't value Marta as a human being. Honestly, no one in this family does. Marta was there for Harlan. She was his friend, his confidant. She took care of him, yet his family thinks so little of her and makes it seem like it was a privilege for her to work for them. The way they always tell her, we welcomed you into our home. Hello, you didn't welcome her to anything. Harlan is the one that invited her. Blanc starts laughing at Ransom's speech because it sounds so ridiculous, and Ransom has just had enough of Detective Blanc. Oh, shut up with that Kentucky Fried Longhorn Leghorn drawl. Yeah, I killed Fran, but I guess I didn't since she's alive. So what do you have on me? Attempted murder? I get arson for the building and a few other charges. With a good lawyer, which I have, I'll be out in no time, Ransom confidently says. He then turns back to Marta. And then you'll see just how much hell I can wreak on your life, you vicious little Again, just showing how little he actually values Marta. Now, Marta doesn't say anything back to him. She just stands there staring at him, and then she pukes all over his face. Yeah, she full-on projectile vomits chunks of food all over Ransom, and everyone just stands there shocked. Marta only pukes when she's lying. That's right, Fran's dead. And you just confessed to her murder, Marta says. Ransom stands there, covered in her puke, debating his next move. She's right. He just confessed to everything because he thought that Fran was still alive, but Marta lied to them. Well, in for a penny, he says, before reaching for a knife from the wheel of knives and charging at Marta. He literally plunges a knife into her chest and falls on top of her. The two lie on the ground, gasping for air, but there's no blood. Ransom looks down at the knife and he pulls it out of Marta's chest and then sees that this was not a real knife, it's a prop knife. He puts it back in her chest, but it keeps going in and out, and then he goes as detectives pull him off Marta and put him in handcuffs. That was just insane. He literally aimed for her heart, so if that had been a real knife, she'd be dead. Police drag Ransom outside of the house and Richard, his dad, starts freaking out. Yeah, his son is worthless, but still, that's his son and he doesn't want to see him behind bars. Meanwhile, the rest of the family is just scattered outside, looking lost and defeated. This is it. Marta won. She'll get to keep the inheritance, the house, the publishing company, everything. And the family, they're left with nothing. For the first time in their lives, they're going to actually have to work for their money. Now, earlier that afternoon, Linda had gone into Harlan's office to return that baseball that Richard threw out the window earlier that week. Well, she found the baseball and she decided to put it back on her dad's desk. And that's when she saw the pink envelope with the letter L on it. Linda picked it up because it's obviously addressed to her, and she pulls out the white card inside, which again is completely blank. Now, this is the card that Harlan threatened Richard with, but when Richard found it earlier this week after Harlan's death, he realized that it was completely blank. So So he didn't even bother to throw it away. He just like left it there on Harlan's desk. So Linda grabs a card. She goes outside to watch her son being taken away for murder. And she lights a cigarette. Linda mentioned that she and her dad had a special way of communicating. Well, here it is. She grabs her lighter and she uses it to reveal a hidden message on the card. It wasn't blank after all. This then reveals to her a message from her dad about her husband's affair. Linda, we have to get the attorneys on the phone right now, Richard shouts at her. But Linda just stares back at him with pure heartbreak in her eyes. And that's when he sees her holding the letter. She knows. Back inside the house, Marta sits down with Blanc, holding a mug and a blanket wrapped around her. So, how did you know that I had something to do with Harlan's death? She asks. From the moment you set foot in front of me, he responds, motioning to her shoes. Marta looks down and that's when she finally spots that one teeny tiny drop of blood on her white shoe. Now, the fact that Blanc noticed this tiny detail is insane. This is like the tiniest drop of blood, but the fact that from the first time Blanc ever saw Marta, he spotted that, it's crazy. Now, I want you to remember something very important. You won not by playing the game Harlan's way, but yours. You're a good person, he says. This family, I should help them, right? Marta asks. Well, I have my opinion, but I have a feeling you'll follow your heart, he says before walking away. We then see Marta walking around in her new house, staring at a portrait of Harlan. It's hard to believe that he's truly gone and that he actually really had no reason to die in the first place. It breaks Marta's heart to know that she's never going to see her friend again. She heads upstairs to the balcony and steps outside, overlooking the front lawn. She stares down at the Thrombey family, who are scrambling in the driveway thinking about what they're going to do next. Marta stares back at them, and then she takes a sip of coffee from the mug that says, "My house, my rules, my coffee." And with that, that is Knives Out. I know, insane. This is truly one of my favorite movies. I love watching this movie during Thanksgiving and Christmas, and even though I know how it ends, I'm still surprised every single time. There's always like a new clue to catch on to, and the entire cast did a phenomenal job. I truly believe that they were a real family, and I honestly miss the Thrombies. I would love to see a sequel with them about how they managed their lives after this chaos and how Marta is doing now. This movie just has so many amazing qualities. It's exciting, it's fun, it's thrilling, it's funny, it's sad and quirky all the way through. So you honestly feel like you're on a roller coaster of emotions throughout the entire thing. The Thrombies are just absolutely insane. They are so out of touch. They are so delusional that it's just hilarious to watch them speak so confidently. I mean, the way they love to brag about how they hired an immigrant nurse, but also constantly demean her is ironic. They truly just live in their own little world and they think that they are perfect and someone to envy. A good example of this is how Linda and Walter both told Marta that they wanted her at the funeral, but that they were outvoted. Again, who is telling the truth in the situation? Or are they both lying to make it seem like they're the only good one in their family that tried to get her to go to the funeral? It's just such an interesting lie. Or again, how Linda brags about how she's self-made, unlike her brother Walt, when again, later we learn that she isn't actually self-made because her dad gave her $1 million loan to get her business going. Every family member is just so uniquely horrible. Like, they're not good people, especially because they always tell Marta that she's a part of the family and so valuable to them. Yet when the will is revealed, they literally call her a bitch and accuse her of sleeping with Harlan to get his money. So yeah, they're not good people, but they are so entertaining to watch. I also just really love how unreliable narrators they are. I mean, you never actually know what the truth is when it comes to them. They are extremely hypocritical. For example, Linda is upset at the fact that Meg leaves Harlan's birthday party before they cut the cake. She even makes a snarky remark about how dad pays for her dumb college degree, yet her own son Ransom is the black sheep of the family. He left the party early after arguing with Harlan and didn't even go to the funeral. He's never had a job. I don't even know if he had a college degree. I don't know if he's done anything productive with his life. Yet she is still nice to him. She still defends him, but judges Meg. So it's just very hypocritical to judge Meg and critique her when her child is much worse. Same with Walt. I'm sure Ransom again has done some horrible things to the family, but still Walt's son Jacob is literally a Nazi child. Yet he doesn't call out his own son or even his wife for their racism, but he calls out Ransom for his mistakes. It's really fun to analyze this family, and as I mentioned earlier, I really miss the Thrombies and I would love to see more of them. Now, as much as I love this movie, it does have its flaws. Not many, but still. I'm just gonna do like a quick rapid fire of like a couple of questions I have about the plot that just didn't really make sense. Okay, Fran meeting at an empty laundromat with Ransom. That doesn't make sense. If you think this guy just killed his own grandpa, why would you agree to meet in an empty, abandoned laundromat where you're gonna be locked inside a tiny, abandoned place with a potential killer and no one around to help you? Why wouldn't she ask to meet at a Starbucks, at a park, somewhere public, even at the police station? Yet she chooses to meet him in this tiny, scary little place where of course he's going to try to kill her to keep her quiet. So that part to me was just kind of insane. I'm like, girl, you gotta blackmail a little bit better. Also, her calling him Hugh and not just telling Marta, as she was passing away, it was Ransom, he's the one that did this. That part was a little bit cheesy to me. What else? Oh, the hospital calling Marta at the exact same time that Blanc is telling Ransom that she's still alive. What are the odds the hospital called at that very moment? Also, did the doctor on the other end of the line be like, wait, why are you saying that's good news, doctor, when I just told you that she died? That part is just a little funky to me. What else? Oh, did Harlan not think about the toxicology report? I mean, obviously, that was going to reveal that Marta gave him the wrong medication, so that would completely blow this entire cover-up plan out of here. As soon as they saw the tox report, they would know the truth. So I do wonder why Harlan didn't think of that. Of course, it was in the spur of the moment that this plan developed. So he even admitted, I'm sure I'm going to forget something. But still, to forget the tox report, I feel like that was a huge part. What else did I question? Oh yeah, did Harlan not think about how, giving Marta all of his money and all of his assets would ruin her life? I mean, of course the family was going to be upset at her. Of course they were going to try to attack her on this. Of course they were going to try to overturn the will. This would bring attention to Marta's mom, who is illegal. So it's interesting how Harlan left all the money to Marta and wanted her to have all of this wealth and just all of this, everything, but didn't think about how this might ruin Marta's life at the same time. Why wasn't Jacob or Walt's wife questioned at the start of the movie? What else? The twist, I mean, it was really good. I knew from the start that Ransom was the bad guy. Even when he was helping Marta, I just knew that he was using her. It seemed quite obvious that he was bad news all around. However, there was a teeny tiny part of me that just wanted to believe that he was misunderstood, that he truly loved his grandpa and was heartbroken over his death. Again, he probably did love his grandpa in his own twisted way, but obviously not enough since he willingly went out of his way to kill him. I also think that Chris Evans has a lot to do with this. It's really difficult for me to see him in a bad light or to see him as the villain. Also, again, the sweaters he wore throughout the movie did not help his case whatsoever. He just looked so good in them. So even though I knew he was bad, I didn't want to believe it. His villain arc, I feel became even more obvious to me when the blackmail plot entered the movie, especially when he told Marta, hey, check your email. Did the blackmailer send you something? I was like, sir, you are being so obvious to the fact that you're the blackmailer that emailed her and are encouraging her to read it because you know there's going to be an email there. So at that point, it was just really obvious that Ransom was the bad guy. What else? Okay, Richard being a cheater. That was very obvious. There didn't seem to be much love between Richard and Linda. It was obvious that she wore the pants in the marriage. So that marriage felt doomed from the start. I read an interview with Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays Linda. And she believes that her character, Linda, kicked Richard out of the house, divorced him, and is now living happily without him. She thinks that Walt established his own publishing company and released his own memoir, that Ransom learned to knit in prison, that Joni turned her brand into Goop, which is Gwyneth Paltrow's, I believe that's how you say her name, which is her wellness brand that she has. Anyways, it was just a really cute interview where she speculates as to where the Thrombies are now, and she says that she misses her character a lot. She would love to go back to this character, but again, who knows if they would ever make a separate movie or a separate series just about the Thrombies themselves. Now, the true stars of this movie are Ana de Armas and Daniel Craig. I mean, wow. They were amazing this movie, and I just can't imagine anyone else playing their roles. I love the fantasy of this movie, and I could literally talk about it for hours, but please let me know your thoughts on this movie down below. What did you think of the Thrombies? What did you think of Harlan's plan, Marta's lies, Detective Blanc? I would just love to hear your thoughts about this entire story, your theories, and your questions down below. I think I will do a video on Glass Onion next, which is a sequel to Knives Out with Detective Blanc, but without the Thrombies. Glass Onion is a very different movie. I mean, it was good. I enjoyed the movie because I just really like Detective Blanc, but I still feel Knives Out is better. There's also a third Knives Out movie that just came out, I think in November of 2025. It's called Wake Up Dead Man, A Knives Out Mystery, and it was really good, you guys. I really liked it. I mean, I still think I prefer the first movie, but this third one was really good. It takes place like in a church, and now all the suspects and all the people involved in this murder mystery are like church people. So it was just a really, really good movie. I recommend that you guys go check it out. I believe Glass Onion and Wake Up Dead Man are on Netflix, and the Knives Out I watched on Prime Video. I just love these movies so much. If you guys have any similar recommendations, please let me know. And yeah, I know this video was extremely long. This is insane. I left out so much from this movie. Imagine if I had included everything. Like, it's crazy. There was so many details to this story, but thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you guys so much. If you guys want to watch more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. I also have a playlist with all my other movie videos. If you guys want to watch my coverage on the Housemaid series, that will also be linked down below. This channel is just such a fun place where we can discuss movies, discuss these crazy, insane twists and plots and all this stuff. So if you guys enjoy that, don't forget to subscribe down below. And yeah, I think that's basically everything I have to say. Thank you again so much for being here. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.